Chapter 81. Slaying the Heart-Plucking Wolf Massacre. Following Lu Qing as he pursued Heart-Plucking Wolf, after a long time, the gamblers previously scared witless in the wooden tower cautiously climbed up from the ground. Seeing the headless corpses on the second floor and the blood that flowed down, they were shaking all over. Still, they didn't dare to run out of the wooden tower. Who knew if they might run into that massacre-causing star outside? What they were hoping for now was that the village chief could kill that massacre-causing star so that they could truly be safe. Killing several leaders of Joyful Tower hardly took Lu Qing any time. So when he leaped from the second floor and cast his gaze while mid-air, he had already spotted Heart-Plucking Wolf's trace. That guy had just dodged behind a small building, trying to use it to block Lu Qing's sight and take the chance to escape. Heart-Plucking Wolf! You can't escape! Lu Qing burst out shouting, his voice carrying for miles, and as he landed, his chi blood surged, propelling him toward the small building like a bolt of lightning. Boy, don't push people too far. Heart-Plucking Wolf hadn't expected Lu Qing to pursue so quickly, and after his whereabouts were exposed, he immediately ran in another direction. Today you're definitely going to die. The two began a deadly chase within the village. Brother Lu truly sneaked in. On the other hand, outside Happy Village, Ma Gu had already been waiting impatiently, contemplating whether to force his way into Happy Village. He was greatly surprised to hear these shouts. However, he quickly felt puzzled. Why does it sound like Brother Lu is gaining the upper hand inside? But no matter what, Ma Gu didn't want to wait any longer. This afternoon had tortured him greatly. On the one hand, he was worried that Lu Qing might have been silently taken care of by the people of Happy Village. On the other hand, he feared that if he rashly broke in, he would ruin Lu Qing's plan. This uncertain waiting was excruciating for Ma Gu. If he had known it would be like this, he would have insisted on coming along with Lu Qing from the start. Let's go. The fight has broken out inside. We should get ready to go over. Boom! As Ma Gu and his men were hurrying over, Lu Qing had finally caught up with Heart-Plucking Wolf. After all, their realms were similar, but Heart-Plucking Wolf was wounded first, affecting his mobility. After catching up, Lu Qing chopped down with his saber, and Heart-Plucking Wolf raised his hand to block it, parrying the blade and then retreating several steps, leaning against a wall, somewhat out of breath. So it was an arm guard. No wonder it's so hard, able to block two of my moves. At that moment, Lu Qing also saw the steel arm guard hidden in Heart-Plucking Wolf's torn sleeve. Boy, do you really need to be so ruthless? Heart-Plucking Wolf breathed heavily, looking at Lu Qing with eyes full of ferocity. Scum like you, no matter how many times you die, it wouldn't cleanse the sins on you, Lu Qing said indifferently. What exactly do you want to let me go, money or women? I have plenty here, all yours. Heart-Plucking Wolf bellowed. I want your life. Lu Qing stopped wasting words with him and chopped with his saber again. Want me dead? It won't be that easy. Knowing that Lu Qing wouldn't let him go, Heart-Plucking Wolf also became vicious. His expression fierce, he pumped up all his chi blood and lunged at Lu Qing. A shorter reach is riskier and skilled in hand-to-hand combat. He was at a disadvantage against Lu Qing, who wielded a long saber. Only by getting in close for a short-range fight could he have a chance to win. But how could Lu Qing fail to see his intention? The information obtained by superpower let Lu Qing know well in advance that Heart-Plucking Wolf excelled at hand-to-hand combat. So when he saw Heart-Plucking Wolf trying to close the distance for a close-quarters fight, Lu Qing swung his saber, and with merely one stroke, forced him back. After being repelled by a single stroke, Heart-Plucking Wolf didn't give up. With nimble footwork, he dodged the blade's edge and with a shake of his arms, lunged again. Then he failed again, once more pushed back by Lu Qing's saber. Moreover, this time he didn't entirely avoid Lu Qing's blade. A fresh, blood-dripping wound appeared on his right shoulder. Had he not dodged quickly, his entire right arm might have been chopped off. Already suffering from internal injuries, now with an added external one, the actions of Heart-Plucking Wolf inevitably slowed down a bit more. But he had no choice. At this point, it was either his death or Lu Qing's demise. In the current situation, only by pressing within 3 feet of Lu Qing was there a sliver of a chance for survival. Otherwise, sooner or later, he would inevitably be chopped to death by Lu Qing's saber. Thus, in the time that followed, the battle between the two fell into a deadlock. The heart-plucking wolf desperately tried to close the distance, hoping to kill Lu Qing with the fist and foot techniques he excelled at. But often, as soon as he moved, he would be pushed back by a slash from Lu Qing. Likewise, relying on nimble movement techniques, Lu Qing couldn't manage to kill him with a single slice. After all, the two were on par in terms of martial arts realm, and a genuine fight between them turned into quite a struggle. It seemed for a moment that neither could overcome the other, but heart-plucking wolf became increasingly desperate as they fought. He just couldn't understand why Lu Qing's saber technique was so exquisite. The moves seemed simple, yet no matter what he tried, he couldn't break through the blockade of that war saber. It was bad enough that this youngster had achieved small success in the Qi blood realm at such a young age. But to also have cultivated such an exquisite saber technique, where on earth had this kid come from? Song County had never heard of such a person. In his desperation, heart-plucking wolf, not careful enough, acquired another injury on his body. What was more fatal was that this time it was on the leg. With his leg in pain, the movement technique of the heart-plucking wolf stalled instantly. A flash of sharpness passed through Lu Qing's eyes. He immediately seized the opening. His Qi blood erupted, and he swung his saber towards his neck. Spare my life! This time, however, heart-plucking wolf couldn't avoid it any longer. Terror flashed in his eyes, and just as he was about to beg for mercy, his head was sent flying by a slash from Lu Qing. After beheading heart-plucking wolf, Lu Qing didn't stop for a moment. Shifting his figure, he killed his way toward the other Happy Village henchmen, who were trembling and peering this way from a distance. He never forgot that his purpose here was to completely obliterate Happy Village. Ah! Spare my life, please! The fight between Lu Qing and heart-plucking wolf, while complex to detail, appeared exceedingly fast in the eyes of others. The Happy Village henchmen, already chilled to bone and overwhelmed with fear upon witnessing how swiftly Lu Qing had slain their village chief, now faced an even greater terror as Lu Qing charged at them. However, their pleas for mercy were destined not to evoke the slightest sympathy from Lu Qing. A massacre officially began. Good sir, spare my life, I beg you. I have silver here. Take it, all of it. As long as you spare me, all this silver is yours. In front of the wooden building, Zhao Laosen knelt on the ground, took out a bag of silver from his bosom, trembling as he held it out in front of him. He was filled with bitter resentment. Perhaps because he sold the bad luck, his gambling fortune was unusually good tonight. In no time at all, not only had he won back what he had lost before, but he made several times more than that. He could have continued to win, but now it was all disrupted by the youngster before him. How could he not hate? But no matter how much he hated in his heart, Zhao Laosen didn't dare show it. The youngster in front of him was a true harbinger of death. Hadn't he seen the corpses strewn all around? All were the work of this harbinger. Conversely, he was extremely frightened, afraid that Lu Qing would chop him down just like he had the others. Looking at Zhao Laosen crying and begging for mercy on his knees before him, there wasn't the slightest ripple in Lu Qing's eyes. With a light flick of the wrist, a flash of sword light passed, and Zhao Laosen's pleas for mercy stopped abruptly. A line of blood appeared at his neck, and he fell to the ground, his head separated from his body. And this scene was precisely witnessed by Ma Gu and the others as they entered Happy Village. Chapter 82, Shock and Request. Seeing Lu Qing decapitate a man with a single stroke, and then upon glancing around at the corpses strewn across the ground, blood flowing everywhere, heads scattered about, Ma Gu and his men couldn't help but suck in a cold breath. They couldn't imagine what had transpired here to result in such a gruesome scene. Xiao Tian looked all around and suddenly cried out in an urgent voice, "Master Ma! Look there!" Ma Gu followed his gaze and saw a head rolling on the ground, its eyes wide open in death, still filled with terror. A sight that was quite frightening. The heart-plucking wolf, Even he is dead. Ma Gu's heart skipped a beat, recognizing the owner of the head. Hearing the sound, Lu Qing turned his head and looked at the newcomers. That emotionless, icy gaze immediately caused Xiao Tian and the others to retreat several steps in fright. Even Ma Gu, a warrior of the muscle-bone realm, felt his heart pounding, a chill rising from the bottom of his heart, making his whole body go numb. "Brother Lu, it's us." Fearing that Lu Qing might swing his saber directly at them, Ma Gu forcefully suppressed the chill in his heart and hurriedly shouted. There was no helping it. Lu Qing's current appearance was too terrifying. The murder intent encompassing his body was like a soul hooker who had burst out of hell, quite horrifying. After staring steadily at the people across from him for a while, which caused Xiao Tian and the others to tremble, the murderous intent in Lu Qing's eyes gradually subsided, returning to calm. He didn't ask Ma Gu and the others why they had come here. Instead, he simply said, "You're here, just in time. Master Ma, there's something I'd like to ask for your help with." "What is it, Brother Lu?" Seeing that the murderous aura around Lu Qing had diminished a lot, Ma Gu let out a sigh of relief and asked. Lu Qing didn't speak again. Instead, he used his saber to pick up a purse from the ground and walked forward. Ma Gu was startled, then followed, and the other few hesitated for a moment before slowly keeping pace. They saw Lu Qing walking ahead, and as Xiao Tian and the others moved along, glimpsing the corpses lying on both sides, they felt a mix of dread and fear. They recognized that most of the corpses were from Happy Village, but there were also quite a few who were obviously gamblers or clients who had come to Happy Village seeking pleasure. What on earth could have prompted Lu Qing to embark on such a massive killing spree? Xiao Tian and the others stared at Lu Qing's back, both fearful and apprehensive. They could never have imagined that Lu Qing, who was polite and courteous to everyone on usual days, could also have such a cruel and bloodthirsty side. Ma Gu looked at the corpses on the ground, feeling a bit shocked as well. He could tell that most of the corpses had been killed while attempting to flee, and some were clearly killed while kneeling and begging for mercy. The fact that not even begging could spare their lives gave some indication of the incredible lethality in Lu Qing's heart at the time. Lu Qing continued on without pause, going straight to a house. Ma Gu's gaze sharpened as he noticed that this house was different from the other buildings in the village. It was constructed of stone. Lu Qing pushed open the door of the house, and Ma Gu's eyes twitched again. With the outside light providing illumination, he saw 3 more corpses inside the house. However, compared to the outside's brutal scenes of decapitation, these 3 corpses died far more decently. At least they were left with their bodies intact. Ma Gu was somewhat puzzled. What was the purpose of Lu Qing bringing them here? Could there be some mystery in these 3 corpses? Then he saw that Lu Qing didn't even glance at the 3 bodies. Instead, he continued walking further inside and stopped before a fence, chopping the iron chain on the gate with one strike. Several faint cries of alarm rang out, and it was only then that Ma Gu realized there were other people in the dimly lit corner. It was strange that since entering the village, he had been too shocked by many things. Otherwise, with his muscle-bone realm cultivation, he should have noticed the presence of others long ago. "Ma, there are a few pitiable girls inside here, and also in the wooden tower at the center of the village, there are some unfortunate ones. If possible, I hope you can help arrange a place for them." As for the expenses of the arrangement, Lu Qing paused for a moment before continuing. "I think there is still a fair amount of silver in this village, which should be enough to settle them in." Ma Gu picked up a lantern from the entrance and walked into the house. With the help of the light, he finally saw clearly the scene in the dim corner. Looking at those little girls locked in iron chains, skinny and angular, their faces filled with terror as they looked at him, he finally understood why Lu Qing had been so furious and went on such a killing spree. Even for him, looking at the scene before him now, the anger surged uncontrollably in his heart. "The actions of the Black Wolf Gang are intolerable," Ma Gu said solemnly. "Don't worry, Brother Lu. I will find a way to take care of these poor children. Not just these few." Lu Qing shook his head. "There are also some girls in the wooden tower. Most of them were sold here against their will. I hope you can help accommodate them too. It doesn't have to be much, just let them have food to eat and be able to survive. Lu Qing knew that with his ability, it was impossible to properly arrange for these girls. He didn't have the energy or time either. Only someone like Ma Gu, who had a family clan and power, would have the ways and means to accommodate them. Ma Gu pondered for a moment before finally nodding. Rest assured, I will do my best to make arrangements. Thank you. Lu Qing pushed open the fence gate and walked in. Under the frightened gaze of those girls, several flashes of sword light shone, completely cutting off the iron chains on their hands and feet. This scene made Ma Gu's eyes twitch again. Even in such a dim environment, Lu Qing was able to precisely sever the chains on the girls' hands and feet without hurting them in the slightest. This control over his saber technique, even he would not dare claim to do it easily. No wonder Lu Qing was able to destroy the entire Happy Village by himself. Even the heart-plucking wolf of the Black Wolf Gang's 9th master was killed. With such mastery of the saber technique realm, who within Happy Village could be his match? All of you, the bad people outside, have been killed by me. Later, you can follow this uncle, Lu Qing said to the little girls cowering in the corner. He will arrange your future lives. Don't worry, you will not go hungry anymore. At this time, Lu Qing paused upon seeing the last girl who was caught and brought in. He took out a purse from his bosom. This is the money your father got for selling you. Take it to buy medicine for your mother. Cure her illness as soon as possible. As for your father, Lu Qing paused before continuing. I have already killed him. The girl's eyes suddenly widened as she stared blankly at Lu Qing. Lu Qing, indifferent to her feelings, placed the purse in her hands and then walked outside. Ma Gu followed him out and instructed Xiao Tian and the others to comfort the girls and clean up the aftermath. After finishing this task, he saw Lu Qing walking away from the village and hurriedly called out, Brother Lu, where are you going? I have some things I want to think about alone. I will pay a visit in a couple of days to thank you, Ma, replied Lu Qing. Hearing this, Ma Gu's footsteps came to a halt. He took a glance at the corpses strewn all around and ultimately did not continue to follow. He simply watched as Lu Qing, with the war saber on his back, slowly left the village. Chapter 83, Transformation of Mind and Nature, Realm of Qi Blood Perfection. Lu Qing carried the war saber on his back, slowly walking through the mountain. Little Li quietly stood on his shoulder. During Lu Qing's fight with the heart-plucking wolf, Little Li had actually been hiding in the shadows. If Lu Qing had shown signs of defeat, it would have intervened. However, the heart-plucking wolf was no match for Lu Qing, so it remained hidden. Even when Ma Gu and others arrived later, it did not show itself. Thus, from beginning to end, no one knew that Lu Qing still had this ace up his sleeve. Walking silently through the mountains, Lu Qing remained mute and did not speak. At this moment, he was in an indescribable emotional state. Having killed so many people today, it was impossible for him not to be affected. After all, those were dozens, if not hundreds, of human lives, not mere ants. The cries and pleas of those people before their deaths had indeed impacted Lu Qing's heart. But rationally, Lu Qing understood that he had not done wrong. Given the actions of those from Happy Village, even dying 10 times over would not be pitied. On one side was the psychological impact of personally ending dozens of lives. On the other was the moral righteousness he recognized rationally. Thus, Lu Qing was now caught in a contradictory struggle within his mind. He knew he had to make sense of this matter. Otherwise, today's events would become a heart demon that would haunt him for life. Wandering aimlessly along the mountain path, various thoughts tumbled through Lu Qing's mind. As he walked, he suddenly found the area before him opening up. Ahead, with no trees in the way, a bright moon hung in the sky, clear and bright. Unknowingly, he had reached the top of a mountain cliff. Lu Qing stared blankly at the bright moon above, motionless for a long time. Suddenly, he cracked a smile. Drawing the war saber from his back, he assumed a starting pose. Little Li lightly jumped onto a nearby rock, quietly watching without interrupting. Lu Qing began to practice his saber technique. What he practiced was still the four-direction saber. However, unlike the previous vigorous and impressive practices, this time's practice seemed particularly devoid of flamboyance. Each move, fully restrained in power, was like an antelope hanging its horns, traceless. Where the war saber passed, instead of stirring the air, it seemed to completely merge with it, creating not a single ripple. If a martial arts expert were present, seeing Lu Qing's saber technique would likely be greatly surprised. Such expansive and compact movements, yet practiced with such a lack of disturbance, indicated that Lu Qing had achieved a very high realm of control over his own power. So much so that the power during the practice did not leak at all, fully concentrated in the war saber. After practicing the four-direction saber technique multiple times, Lu Qing sheathed his saber and stood still, looking up at the bright moon, his eyes now tranquil. Clear the mind and see the nature. Hold on to the original heart. A true martial arts expert always acts as they wish, without concern, and isn't bound by so-called rules and restrictions. As long as I believe what I am doing is right, even if I have to oppose the world and slaughter across the heavens, I should not waver in my heart. Just like this bright moon, regardless of how the myriad things in the world change, or how deceitful human hearts can be, it remains so spotlessly pure, eternal, and unchanging. Without such spirit and conviction, how would I qualify in the future to climb the peaks of martial arts, to break through postnatal limitations, and achieve the position of an innate grandmaster? Watching the bright moon in the sky, waves of enlightenment flowed through Lu Qing. The negative emotions that had surged due to the killing of nearly 100 lives dissipated into nothing. In their place, there was now a steadfast determination in the pursuit of martial arts. Unexpectedly, this trip to Happy Village has allowed me to gain control over my power and elevate it further, reaching the realm of perfect blood qi. Indeed, just moments ago, Lu Qing had comprehended his true nature and refined his temperament. His martial arts realm had also achieved a significant breakthrough. In terms of realm perception, he had reached the stage of qi blood perfection. He had perfected control over his qi blood power, achieving seamless integration. Of course, it was only the realm perception that had reached qi blood perfection. Next, he still needed to continually nurture his qi blood, increasing the total amount of his qi blood power to truly reach the realm of perfect blood qi realm. At that point, he would be able to attempt to break through to the next realm, the muscle bone realm. Simultaneously, having achieved this realm perception also meant that the previous limitation of only being able to refine one elixir of blood and qi a day no longer existed. In the days to come, as long as he had enough elixirs, he could unabashedly enhance his qi blood power. For, no matter how much qi blood power he accumulated, he could perfectly control it. Little Li, let's go, we're heading back. Thinking this, Lu Qing didn't want to stay any longer and called out as he walked down the mountain. He had been away from the village for quite a long time. He didn't know how worried everyone must have been about him. Little Li swiftly landed on Lu Qing's shoulder. Little Li, I owe you thanks for this time. In a few days, shall I fish for some strange fish for you? Woof! Standing on top of a small hill, looking down at Juli village bathed in moonlight, Lu Qing felt a complex rush of emotions. After encountering the ugly nature of villagers like Zhao Laosan and Lai Zitu from other villages, he felt very fortunate that the village he had initially crossed over to was Juli village, a place of simplicity. Otherwise, he and Little Yen probably wouldn't have survived this long. This was also one of the reasons why he was determined to completely annihilate Happy Village. Of course, he could have taken Little Yen and fled far away, but then Jili Village would inevitably have suffered the vengeance of Happy Village. Now, with Happy Village eliminated by him, although there was still the threat of the Black Wolf Gang, their influence was far in the county seat, and with Ma Gu's wisdom, temporarily concealing his identity should be manageable. Lu Qing believed that, with just a bit more time, even the Black Wolf Gang would no longer pose a threat. When he almost reached the village entrance, Little Li suddenly lightly jumped off his shoulder and disappeared into the darkness. Lu Qing paused, then heard an uncertain cry come from ahead. Ah Qing! Lu Qing squinted and saw a figure emerge from behind the letter tree at the village entrance. With the help of the moonlight, he instantly recognized who it was. Brother Din? Is it really you? Ah Qing, you're finally back. Brother Din heaved a sigh of relief, overwhelmed with joy. Brother Din, why are you out here? Lu Qing asked. As if you have to ask. When you left this morning, you said you'd be back soon. But a whole day passed and you didn't return. Everyone in the village was terribly worried. Even old Dr. Chun came down from the mountain. Everyone is gathered at the ancestral hall now. Grandfather asked me to wait here for you. Brother Din explained. I'm sorry for worrying everyone, Lu Qing said apologetically. Ah Qing, now that you're back, what about the Black Wolf gang? Brother Din cautiously asked. It's been dealt with. The Black Wolf gang won't be troubling our village for a while, Lu Qing replied. That's great. Ah Qing, you're really incredible. Come on. Let's hurry back. Everyone is waiting for your return. Upon hearing this, Brother Din was thrilled and moved to pull Lu Qing along. Hold on. Lu Qing didn't immediately go back with him. Instead, he walked to the foot of the letter tree and took down the red rope he had tied there that morning, placing it back under the stone slab. Then he said, Let's go. Chapter 84 Return. Grandpa, Grandpa, Ah Qing is back. Upon entering the village, Dun ran all the way to the bright ancestral hall and shouted loudly. What, Ah Qing is back? Is Ah Qing okay? You brat, are you sure you didn't see wrong? As soon as these words were heard, a commotion instantly stirred inside the ancestral hall, and many villagers ran out. How could I possibly see wrong? Look, isn't that Ah Qing? Dun, displeased, pointed and shouted towards the back. Following the direction of his finger, everyone looked and saw a person slowly walking over. Under the bright moonlight, the features of the brows and eyes were faintly discernible. Who else could it be but Lu Qing? It really is Ah Qing. The villagers were extremely surprised. Sorry for making everyone worry. Lu Qing arrived in front of the ancestral hall and bowed gently to the villagers. It's good that you're back. Good that you're back, Grandpa Zhang said, very relieved. Yes, as long as you're back safe, it's good. The other villagers also chimed in. All day, they had indeed been in fear and anxiety. They were worried that Lu Qing would leave and never return to the village. And they feared that they might be visited by the ferocious evildoers of the Black Wolf gang. Now, seeing that Lu Qing had finally returned safely, the huge weight on everyone's heart had finally been lifted. Grandpa Zhang, where is little Yen? Lu Qing looked around and, not seeing little Yen, couldn't help but ask. She's inside sleeping. You hadn't returned all day, and in the afternoon, she kept crying for her brother, crying bitterly, and refused to eat dinner. Old Dr. Chun gave her a couple of injections, and only then did she fall asleep. Is Master also inside? Lu Qing asked. Yes, old Dr. Chun came down from the mountain with little Yen because you hadn't returned. Lu Qing fell silent. He knew that the reason his master had come down from the mountain, besides being worried about him, was probably also to protect the villagers of Jili village. Grandpa Zhang, I'll go inside first to apologize to my master for making him worry so much, Lu Qing said. That's right, don't let it bother you. Though old Dr. Chun hasn't spoken, we can all see that he was equally very worried about you, Grandpa Zhang quickly added. Lu Qing walked into the ancestral hall and saw under a tree in the courtyard his master sitting on a stone, holding little Yen. Back already? Old Dr. Chun saw Lu Qing and finally relaxed a bit on his face. Disciple was reckless, making master worry. Please punish me, Lu Qing said with his head lowered. It's good that you are back safely. Old Dr. Chun sighed. Although he thought that Lu Qing's decision in the morning was reckless, he also knew, as a filial son suddenly learning the true facts of his parents' death, how many could genuinely remain calm. The reason he initially taught Lu Qing martial arts was exactly for fear of such an eventuality. Is everything resolved? The elder doctor looked at Lu Qing and keenly noticed some bloodstains on his clothes. But he didn't see any sign of injury on his disciple. It's temporarily resolved. For the next while, there shouldn't be anyone coming to disturb everyone in the village. Lu Qing answered. Oh? What did you do? Elder Chun, seeing such confidence in his disciple, asked somewhat unexpectedly. During the day, he had heard from the villagers that the people who had come to cause trouble in the village in the morning were from the Black Wolf Gang. As someone who often went in and out of the prefecture, how could the elder doctor not know what the Black Wolf Gang represented? It was precisely because he knew the consistent behavior of the Black Wolf Gang that he had specifically come down from the mountain to protect the villagers of Jili Village. Now, hearing Lu Qing say that he had resolved the matter, how could he not be surprised? However, Lu Qing did not directly answer his master's question. Instead, he asked, "Master, do you know of a place nearby called Happy Village?" Happy Village? The elder doctor thought for a moment and shook his head. I haven't heard of it. Lu Qing was at a loss for words. But then he thought that his master, the elder, besides treating and healing people, was mainly focused on studying medical skills. He didn't really care about other matters. Not having heard of Happy Village was to be expected. Happy Village is a gambling den and brothel set up by a leader of the Black Wolf Gang, around 50 or 60 miles from here. My father was framed by people from Happy Village and ended up owing a large amount of money. Those people wanted to seize our family's property in one fell swoop and force my mother to sell herself and enter the village. My parents refused, and in the end, they both drowned themselves in the river. I see. Elder Chun finally understood why his disciple had suddenly mentioned this village. The villagers outside also now understood how Lu Ming and his wife had actually died. So, Happy Village now? The elder doctor asked. Happy Village no longer exists, Lu Qing said. The disciple has personally avenged his parents. The elder doctor was silent for a moment before he said, Such a harmful village being gone is a good thing. The elder doctor thought that when Lu Qing spoke of revenge, it meant that he had killed the leader and dissolved the so-called Happy Village. Although he himself disliked harming others, he knew that as a son, seeking revenge for one's parents was a natural and rightful act, and even he couldn't say much about it. At this point, the elder doctor had no idea how intent on killing his own disciple was, that he had actually wiped out that village except for those poor girls. Lu Qing did not directly say that he had killed nearly 100 people overnight. Seeing that his master did not blame him, he also breathed a sigh of relief. On the other hand, the other villagers, upon hearing that Lu Qing had destroyed the entire village, all showed shocked expressions. They had already known since the morning that Lu Qing was highly skilled in martial arts. But destroying a mountain stronghold by himself, this feat greatly exceeded their imaginations. Lu Qing noticed the expressions of the villagers. He thought for a moment before saying, Grandpa Zhang, although I have destroyed the village that harmed my parents, it's best not to spread this matter. The village was backed by the Black Wolf Gang from the town. We don't know if they will send someone to investigate, so everyone, please try not to mention this matter for the time being. Although Lu Qing believed Ma Gu was capable enough to handle the matter concerning Happy Village, there were still things that needed to be reminded. Exactly. Did you all hear that? Don't mention anything about Qing when you are outside. No, not even that. During this time, apart from tending to the fields, you are not to go out at all, not even to the market, understand? Old Zhang, realizing the seriousness, hurriedly shouted, We understand. Most of those still gathered at the temple area were the steadier adults of the village, who naturally understood the gravity of the situation and responded in agreement. All right, since Qing is back, let's disperse. Everyone has been worried all day and hasn't even eaten dinner. We're all tired now. Let's discuss this further tomorrow, Old Zhang added. Chapter 85, The Letter Silver Armored Guards. Ma Gu. The situation in Happy Village has already been dealt with. But how should the rescued girls be arranged? That night, at a grand gathering in Ma Gu's residence, Xiao Tian was reporting on the situation. What are their own wishes? Ma Gu inquired. These girls, apart from a few that were kidnapped, are mostly sold by their own parents or husbands to the village. So most of them don't want to go back to their original homes and say they hope that Ma Gu can give them a way out. Ma Gu pondered for a moment and then said, "Well, keep a few to help out in the grand gathering area, and send the rest to the cloth village. Old Li mentioned a shortage of manpower a while ago, so if I send him so many people, he shouldn't bother me anymore." Yes. Xiao Tian too thought that this was a good idea. The cloth village was all women, and arranging the girls there would be appropriate. There's another matter, Ma Gu. In Happy Village, aside from finding a good amount of money, we also found these 2 items. Xiao Tian pulled out 2 books from his bosom and presented them. Ma Gu took them and was somewhat surprised. Secret manuals? He flipped through them and discovered they were 2 martial arts from the Qi blood realm. One was called the Heart-Picking Hand and the other Poison Wolf Fist. That 9th master of the Black Wolf Gang, known as the Heart-Plucking Wolf, must have relied on these 2 martial arts, Ma Gu said. Yes, these 2 secret manuals were found in the Heart-Plucking Wolf's bedroom, placed in a rather conspicuous spot, and the pages of the manuals were frayed, suggesting that the Heart-Plucking Wolf often studied these 2 martial arts diligently. Xiao Tian explained. Diligence is useless when faced with Brother Lu. He couldn't even land a hit, not even a scratch on his clothes, Ma Gu disdainfully said. Ma Gu had observed previously that Lu Qing had nearly slaughtered everyone in Happy Village without a single injury on himself, only some bloodstains on his clothes. It was evident that the Heart-Plucking Wolf posed no threat to Lu Qing. It's true, I asked the girls who were present, and they said that the Heart-Plucking Wolf was beaten by young Master Lu just after a single exchange and wasn't his match at all, Xiao Tian said. My little brother is really something. I originally thought he was just extraordinarily talented in cultivation, but I didn't expect his prowess in martial arts and fighting skills to be equally astonishing, Ma Gu sighed. He was genuinely shocked by the strength Lu Qing had demonstrated. As a martial artist from the same Qi blood realm, and with the Heart-Plucking Wolf being a seasoned fighter who had broken through the realm years ago, he hadn't been able to threaten Lu Qing in the slightest. The gap in their strengths was so wide that he couldn't quite imagine how Lu Qing had trained. While advancement in martial arts could be explained by cultivation talent, combat experience can't simply be accumulated through talent alone. However, from the battle traces in the village, it was clear that Lu Qing had been overpowering the Heart-Plucking Wolf from start to finish. How did he manage to do that? Incomprehensible, truly incomprehensible. Ma Gu felt his mind was somewhat inadequate. I didn't expect young Master Lu to have such a heavy killing intent either, Xiao Tian remarked, recalling the scene in Happy Village where severed heads were strewn about, now feeling quite uneasy. He could never have imagined that the usually gentle, humble, and polite Lu Qing, once he harbored the intent to kill, would be so terrifying, chopping heads off at every turn. As such, his heart was filled with an indescribable sense of awe toward Lu Qing. Ma Gu, remembering the carnage in Happy Village that night, also felt somewhat uneasy. As a powerful figure from the muscle-bone realm, he had had his fair share of battles and not without fatalities. However, even with a decade of fighting, his killings paled in comparison to what Lu Qing had wrought in a single night. He shook his head, casting away the gruesome scenes from his mind. All right, keep these 2 secret manuals with me for now. They are Brother Lu's spoils of war. In a couple of days, after tallying up the money found from Happy Village, I'll personally bring it to him, Ma Gu said. Ma Gu, what should we do next about the Black Wolf Gang? Xiao Tian asked. With Happy Village cut off, they will surely send people to investigate. Xiao Tian was worried. The Black Wolf Gang wasn't easy to provoke. Their power was even stronger than the Ma families. If the 2 factions clashed, they might not withstand the pressure. What response? We don't need to deal with this, Ma Gu said. The housekeeper of Wei values Brother Lu greatly, and certainly doesn't want harm to come to him. I'll write a letter and you'll depart tonight to deliver it to Wei Mansion. The rest, naturally, we don't need to worry about. Xiao Tian's eyes lit up, realizing that Ma Gu had already calculated a plan. That night, Xiao Tian set off hastily on a swift horse. Arriving just as the city gates opened at dawn, he entered the prefecture and delivered the letter to the gatekeeper of Wei Mansion. When the housekeeper of Wei received the letter and read it, his face showed surprise. After thinking it over, He took the letter to a graceful courtyard where a middle-aged man, dressed in training attire and sporting a black beard, was practicing his punches and respectfully said, "Master, there is a matter for which I need your decision." "Oh? What's the matter? Even you can't make a decision?" The middle-aged man continued his practice as he spoke. "It's about the disciple of old Dr. Chun." Hearing this, the bearded middle-aged man slowly brought his motion to a stop and ended his morning practice. "What is it?" "Here's a letter, just delivered by someone from the Ma family." The Grand Steward presented the letter. Chapter 86. The letter Silver Armored Guards _2. Magu? Is it the branch family member of the Ma family who was almost expelled? The middle-aged man with a black beard took the letter and said, "Yes, exactly that Magu. Recently, when young Master Xian went out, he also stayed with him. It was thanks to his reminder that the young master was timely sent to old Dr. Chan and got treated," the Grand Steward explained. The middle-aged man with a black beard nodded and began to read the letter. As he read, his brows inevitably furrowed. "Is the matter mentioned here true?" After finishing, the middle-aged man with a black beard looked up. "I haven't investigated it yet, but that Magu should not dare to lie about such a matter," replied the housekeeper. "Then, the actions of the Black Wolf gang are really inappropriate. They have crossed the line?" the middle-aged man with a black beard said, frowning. "Should I send someone to deal with the Black Wolf gang?" the Grand Steward tentatively asked. With the power of the Wei family, erasing a small gang like the Black Wolf gang wouldn't be difficult. And he knew that the master probably wouldn't tolerate such issues. The middle-aged man glanced at the letter in his hands and after a moment's thought, said, "Give a warning to the Black Wolf gang and tell them to restrain themselves." "Master!" The Grand Steward was taken aback. This decision didn't seem like the master's usual style. The middle-aged man didn't explain immediately but instead lifted the letter in his hand. "The young man mentioned in this letter, he is the disciple of old Dr. Chun, right?" Indeed, when the young master was first brought to old Dr. Chun, it was this young Master Lu who tirelessly made medicines all night that saved the young master's life. "Such a ferocious young man," the middle-aged man with a black beard praised. "To slay nearly 100 criminals in one night, such ferocity is rare to see across the entire Tsang state." The Grand Steward was silent. He hadn't expected that Lu Qing also had this side to him. At Half Mountain Small Courtyard, he used to see Lu Qing every day but had never realized he was such a decisive killer. When he first saw the content of the letter, for a moment, he even doubted whether Magu had mistaken the name. What stunned him more was the progress in Lu Qing's martial arts cultivation. He remembered that when he left the Half Mountain Small Courtyard, Lu Qing had just entered the Qi blood realm. It hadn't been long, and he was already capable of killing the heart-plucking wolf, a martial artist who had been refining in the Qi blood realm for years and had reached Qi blood minor achievement. "I recall that recently, you suggested that the mistress send some gifts to this young man, correct?" the middle-aged man asked. "Yes, initially when I was taking care of the young master at Elder Chen's place, I often saw young Master Lu. Noticing his intelligence and natural talent for martial arts cultivation, he indeed seemed like a rare young talent. Hence, I suggested that the mistress form a good relationship with him," the Grand Steward explained. "Your judgment is good, he indeed is a rare talent," the middle-aged man remembered and praised again. "But, a genius also needs pressure to grow faster. Leave the Black Wolf gang for now. Let them be a sharpener for this young man." "I understand, Master," said the Grand Steward, finally realizing the master's intention. "All right, go and arrange it." The housekeeper of Wei dismissed himself, first called the guards of the mansion, gave some instructions, then wrote a letter himself and sent it with Xiao Tian, who was waiting outside for the news. While Xiao Tian carried the reply letter heading towards the bustling center, on the other side, from a side gate of Wei Mansion, a troop of guards mounted on horses streamed out, heading toward the west of the city. Are those Wei Mansion's silver armored guards? What's happened that Wei Mansion has deployed the silver armored guards? Last time Wei Mansion's silver armored guards were dispatched was when the young master of the Wei family had an accident a while ago, Has that young master sneaked out again? Nonsense, as far as I know, that young master's injuries haven't even healed yet. Where would he get the energy to go out? Then what's the cause this time? As Wei Mansion held a transcendent status within the prefecture, its internal movements were always closely watched by the various factions in the city. Seeing this troop of guards appear, the spies of various factions immediately became alert. The Silver Armored Guards, a protective organization exclusive to Wei Mansion, are said to consist of martial artists at least at Muscle Bone Realm. Muscle Bone Realm, in other forces within the prefecture, those possessing such strength are considered central figures. Yet, in Wei Mansion they only serve as guards. That truly shows the unapproachable status of Wei Mansion within the county, a force that no one dares to provoke. Even the county lord, if he wanted to see the Wei family patriarch, would have to send a formal request in advance, and it would still depend on the mood of the Wei family patriarch at that time. Now seeing a small squadron of silver armored guards coming out of the Wei Mansion, how could this not shock all the major powers? Look! The silver armored guards are heading towards the west of the city. When the powers saw the destination of the silver armored guards, they were taken aback again. The western part of the city was always a mix of all sorts of people, where various sects and classes coexisted. The powers were intricately complex, and all kinds of characters were found there. The silver armored guards were actually heading there, but what for? Especially for the powers that were already in the western part of the city, this sight made them particularly anxious, because they could not be sure whether the silver armored guards were coming for them. Thus, under the watch of all the powers in the city, the silver armored guards made their way to the west and eventually stopped in front of a building. Chunyue Building? When everyone saw the destination of the silver armored guards, they were all stunned. Who didn't know about Chunyue Building, the most famous brothel in the prefecture? But what were the silver armored guards doing at Chunyue Building? Was some important person inside, and they needed to provide assistance. However, the next moment, everyone knew they had guessed wrong. The leading silver armored guard, stopping in front of Chunyue Building without even dismounting, directly shouted, "Black Wolf, get out here! Black Wolf!" Hearing this shout, everyone was stunned again. They had never imagined that the silver armored guards would come to the Chunyue Building looking for the man behind the scenes, the leader of the Black Wolf gang, Black Wolf. This revelation made everyone eager to watch what would unfold. Especially the other powers in the west of the city, they were reveling in another's misfortune. They didn't know how Black Wolf had offended the Wei Mansion, but as powers in the west of the city, their relationships with each other were never really friendly. Seeing that the Black Wolf gang had foolishly provoked the enormous force of the Wei Mansion, they couldn't be happier. Inside Chunyue Building, a tall, burly man with broad shoulders and arms, an open chest covered in black hair, and a conspicuous scar across his face looked with astonishment. "The silver armored guards are here for me? Big brother!" At this moment, several men burst into the room. "What's going on? Why do the Wei Mansion's silver armored guards want to see you?" They were other leaders of the Black Wolf gang. "I don't know either," Black Wolf said with some panic. He immediately recalled the recent happenings in the gang but couldn't figure out how they had offended the Wei Mansion. "Why are the Wei Mansion's silver armored guards coming with such ferocity, specifically asking for you?" asked the second in command of the gang. "I'd love to know. Haven't I been with you all in the gang lately, not even leaving the west side? Where could I have had the chance to provoke the Wei Mansion? And moreover, where would I get the guts to do so?" Black Wolf was both startled and panicked, completely lacking his usual authority in the gang. The other leaders thought likewise. Despite their Black Wolf gang being quite influential in the west of the city and known as one of the top 3 gangs, in the face of a behemoth like the Wei Mansion, they were really nothing. So give their big brother 10,000 guts, and he still wouldn't dare provoke the Wei Mansion. "What do we do now? Should we go out?" asked one of the leaders. "Do we have a choice?" Black Wolf said with a bitter laugh. The other leaders fell silent. True, with the silver armored guards right at the doorstep, even if they wanted to flee, it was too late. Maybe things aren't as bad as we think. Although the silver armored guards came aggressively, they didn't barge in. There might still be room for negotiation, said the second in command. That makes sense, said the other leaders, their eyes lighting up. With Wei Mansion's aggressive stance, if their Black Wolf gang had truly offended them fatally, they wouldn't be so polite to call out from outside. They would have already barged in to capture people. All right, I'll go out. Trusting the judgment of his second in command, Black Wolf gritted his teeth at the statement. Chapter 87 Warning. Outside of Chunyue Building, spies from various factions waited for a while, but did not see anyone from the Black Wolf gang emerge, revealing a look of astonishment on their faces. Could it be that the Black Wolf gang dared to disobey the Wei family's orders? Just as he was considering whether to barge in and apprehend someone, suddenly, several figures appeared at the entrance of Transcend Building. The man at the forefront, with a face full of humble smiles, hurried over to the several Silver Moon guards. He bowed and scraped, saying, "I had no idea that the noble Silver Moon guards would grace us with their presence. My failure to welcome you from afar is inexcusable. Please forgive me." Those behind him, other leaders of the Black Wolf gang, also accompanied their smiles with extremely low postures. However, the Silver Moon guards were not swayed by this act. The leader, a Silver Moon guard armed with a long spear, directly shouted, "Black Wolf, do you admit your guilt?" Black Wolf's heart pounded fiercely. The other leaders of the Black Wolf gang also changed their expressions. "Sir, I have been wronged. I genuinely do not know what the crime is. Even if you gave me 100,000 times the courage, I would not dare to offend your mansion." Black Wolf wore an expression of grievance. Bang! No sooner had Black Wolf finished speaking than the leading Silver Moon guard flipped his spear around, the butt leading, and with the swiftness of lightning that leaves no time for ears to react, he jabbed it toward Black Wolf's chest. This sudden move, executed with extreme urgency and sophisticated technique, took Black Wolf by surprise with his capabilities, leaving him no time to react before the spearhead struck him in the chest. The powerful force erupted, causing him to spurt a mouthful of fresh blood and send him flying backward, crashing into the wall of Chunyue Building, creating a hole in it. "Big brother!" The other Black Wolf gang leaders cried out in shock. But it was far from over. As their cries of alarm barely left their mouths, several more spear shadows flashed by, and the remaining Black Wolf gang leaders likewise spat out fresh blood and flew backward, landing beside Black Wolf. This sudden development stunned the onlookers. None had imagined that the Silver Moon guards would strike without warning. Even less expected was that the infamous Black Wolf, known throughout the west of the city, would be unable to withstand even a single move, resulting in serious injury and bloodshed. "Sir, why is this?" Sitting paralyzed in front of the wall, Black Wolf looked toward the Silver Moon guard with fear. Perfect Bone Marrow Realm. With just one move, he deduced that the Silver Moon guard's martial arts cultivation was far above his own, having reached the realm of the Perfect Bone Marrow Realm. Otherwise, how could he, who had achieved great success of sinew and bone, be unable to defend against even one move? Only someone who had reached perfection in the bone realm, with absolute control over their own power, achieving the flawless, ideal state, could leave him unable to trace the path of that single spear thrust. For a mere guard to possess the power of the Perfect Bone Marrow Realm. At that moment, Black Wolf's awe for the Wei Mansion reached its pinnacle. "Black Wolf, don't think that the deeds of your Black Wolf gang can truly deceive everyone." At that moment, the leading Silver Moon guard spoke indifferently. "Your Black Wolf gang has set up a fort in the mountains outside the city, snatched people's wives and daughters, forced the good into prostitution, and caused harm all around. Do you really think others are unaware? For the matter of Happy Village?" Black Wolf's eyes widened in incredulity. He never imagined that the inconspicuous Happy Village on the outskirts of the city would bring calamity upon him. Since when did the mighty Wei family pay attention to such trivial matters? "Sir, it's not like that." Black Wolf hurriedly tried to explain, but the Silver Moon guard did not give him a chance. "Regarding that Happy Village, our family head is very displeased. Happy Village has been destroyed, but your Black Wolf gang cannot go unpunished. This spear thrust is just a warning. If you do not learn to restrain yourself, then there is no need for the existence of your Black Wolf gang. It had even alarmed that person from the Wei family. This truly filled Black Wolf with dread. However, before he could continue to explain anything further, several Silver Moon Guards had already turned their steeds around and left in the direction from which they had come, utterly disregarding the prone leaders of the Black Wolf gang lying on the ground. The Silver Moon Guards arrived suddenly and left just as quickly. Yet the shock they left behind was by no means small. With just one Silver Moon Guard taking action, a few casual thrusts of his spear were all it took to leave the entire group of Black Wolf gang leaders with serious injuries they couldn't rise from. The unfathomable depths of the Wei Mansion once again inspired immense respect and fear in the powers of the County Lord Mansion. Over the past few years, the Wei family had shifted the focus of their clan's operations to the State Mansion. In Song County, they kept a much lower profile. This had led many powers to grow restless recently. But the mobilization of the Silver Moon Guards now made it abundantly clear to everyone. Song County was still under the Wei family's control. Looking at the severely injured leaders of the Black Wolf gang in front of Chunyue Building, there was pity in many eyes, but even more so, there was schadenfreude. Having offended the Wei family, even the Wei family patriarch had expressed his displeasure. For the Black Wolf gang, life in this prefecture would likely become quite difficult from now on. Those few powers also based in the western part of the city looked at Black Wolf and the others with ill intentions in their eyes. There were even some who started thinking about whether they should take advantage of Black Wolf and his group's injuries to finish them off. However, this thought was quickly dismissed as soon as it arose. Even the Silver Moon Guards hadn't killed Black Wolf and his people outright. Taking action now would be a direct affront to the Wei family. Only a fool would court such trouble after witnessing the Wei family's display of power. Yet, while they couldn't kill them, the power dynamics in the western part of the city could certainly change. The Black Wolf gang had run rampant in the west side for long enough. It was time for them to cede some benefits. The few local factions in the west side were making their calculations. Other powers, however, were interested in another matter. Find out immediately what this happy village is that the Silver Moon Guard mentioned, was the command echoed among many factions. In the County Lord Mansion, a middle-aged man with handsome features and a pair of phoenix eyes issued a similar command. After his subordinate left, his gaze turned towards a certain direction in the city, his eyes sparkling with an indiscernible light. As the county lord, he was supposed to be the highest authority in the prefecture. But because of the Wei family's presence, his prominence in the County Lord Mansion had been somewhat diminished. Of course, this was also a deliberate choice on his part. After all, the Wei family was not something he could afford to provoke. Even though he himself hailed from a prestigious family. Because the Wei family was special. Among other respected families, few had a living ancestor in the innate realm. I really want to see what it is that has caused you, who are usually so reclusive, to suddenly become so high-profile, murmured the man with phoenix eyes, gazing ahead. Xiao Tian had no knowledge of what had happened in the city. After receiving the reply from the Wei Mansion, he had immediately left the city, rushing back to the market. Therefore, he missed the whole spectacle. Because his steed had not been given enough rest, Xiao Tian did not hurry on his return journey. It was only in the afternoon that he arrived back at the market, delivering the letter to Ma Gu. As soon as Ma Gu opened the letter and read it, his face lit up with joy. Get ready, we're going to Jiuli Village. Chapter 88. Will and Intention. When Lu Qing saw Ma Gu off, he looked at the two secret manuals in his hand and fell into deep thought. Not long ago, Ma Gu had come to visit. He brought with him a portion of his spoils from Happy Village and two pieces of news. One of them was that he had cleaned up all the bodies at Happy Village and arranged for the unfortunate girls to be settled properly. This did not surprise Lu Qing. During the day, he had gone out again and discovered that Happy Village had turned into ruins. Ma Gu had not only disposed of the bodies, he had also burned the entire village. Another piece of news surprised him. The Wei family had actually intervened to help suppress this matter. This meant that, for the time being, he didn't have to worry about the Black Wolf gang coming to the village to cause trouble. The Wei family, this time, I owe them a favor, Lu Qing thought to himself. He could guess why the Wei family had helped him. It was nothing more than seeing his good martial arts talent and potential to become a strong warrior, so they wanted to make an early investment in him. But understanding this was one thing. The favor Lu Qing still remembered. After all, there are many who add flowers to the brocade, but few who send charcoal in the snowy weather. And this time, the Wei family helping him block the Black Wolf Gang could indeed be considered as sending charcoal in the snowy weather. However, Lu Qing currently lacked the ability to repay this kindness and could only keep it in mind for now. "Ah Qing, are you home?" While Lu Qing was deep in thought, a shout came from outside the house. Lu Qing recognized it was Grandpa Zhang's voice and put away the 2 secret manuals and walked outside. "Grandpa Zhang, what's up?" "Nothing much. I saw that guests had come to your house, so I came over to check," Grandpa Zhang said. "Yes, but they just left," Lu Qing responded. He had wanted to invite Ma Gu and the others to stay for dinner, but Ma Gu seemed to have other matters to handle and had regretfully declined. "By the way, Ah Qing, the people who came earlier, I found them somewhat familiar. Was one of them Ma Gu from the fair?" Grandpa Zhang asked. Grandpa Zhang also occasionally visited the fair and still remembered those in charge. "Yes, it was indeed Ma Gu. I have some dealings with him, and this time he brought some stuff over for me." Lu Qing did not deny. It really was Ma Gu. Grandpa Zhang was somewhat surprised. "Ah Qing, you are getting more and more resourceful, even able to forge connections with such important figures." To Grandpa Zhang, a rural old man like himself, Ma Gu was definitely regarded as one of the most influential figures in the area. After all, he was someone who managed a large fair. He had not expected that Lu Qing would even know such a person. Grandpa Zhang was both surprised and relieved. "It's just Ma Gu appreciating me," Lu Qing said with a smile. "That still requires you to have your own abilities. Otherwise, even if someone tried to force it, Ma Gu probably wouldn't even give them a second glance." Grandpa Zhang shook his head, clearly not agreeing with Lu Qing's modesty. Though he didn't have much experience, he knew that people like Ma Gu, who seemed friendly to everyone, actually had extremely high standards. These rural folks like them didn't figure in his considerations at all. Otherwise, every time people crowded the fair, you didn't see Ma Gu being so polite to anyone, let alone paying personal visits. "Let's not talk about this anymore, Grandpa Zhang. I was just about to cook. Would you like to stay and eat together?" Lu Qing smiled, not intending to continue the topic further. "No, they made my share at home. I'll go back to eat. Actually, I came over because there's something else I need to tell you," Grandpa Zhang said. "What's the matter?" Lu Qing asked. "It's about these silver notes and this IOU." Grandpa Zhang took out a few silver notes and an IOU from his pocket. Lu Qing glanced at them and recognized them as the silver notes that Han Wu had taken out to offer as a gift when begging for his life, as well as the IOU signed with Little Yan's father's name. However, at that time, after he had killed Han Wu and the others, he was eager to find Ma Gu to seek information and did not pay attention to these minor matters. "These silver notes were sent to you by thugs from the Black Wolf Gang. Now they're returned to their rightful owner." Grandpa Zhang handed the silver notes and the IOU to Lu Qing. Lu Qing looked at them but only took the IOU, not the silver notes. "Grandpa Zhang, I don't want these silver notes. Please distribute them among the villagers." "You don't want them?" Grandpa Zhang was stunned. It's worth noting that there were 3 notes in his hand, each valued at 100 taels, adding up to a total of 300 taels of silver. Moreover, everyone had witnessed firsthand how Lu Qing had killed Han Wu and his gang. Otherwise, no matter how simple the villagers were, it would be hard to say they wouldn't be tempted by these notes. So much silver, and now Lu Qing was saying he didn't want it? "Grandpa Zhang, after this incident, I have come to realize that there were so many hidden truths behind my parents' deaths. Now that I think about it, if it weren't for everyone in the village helping out, Little Yen and I would probably have been captured by those Black Wolf Gang villains long ago. Also yesterday, if it weren't for everyone's desperate resistance, Little Yen might have been captured before I could return. We can never repay the great kindness the villagers have shown us. Let these silver notes serve as a small token of our gratitude." Lu Qing had witnessed yesterday how the villagers protected Little Yen. Even though little Li would have prevented Han Wu and his gang from harming little Yen even without the villagers' interference, the villagers bravely stepping forward and risking their lives to protect little Yen was still very touching to Lu Qing. And after encountering scum like Zhao Lao San and Lai Zitu, who would sell their own womenfolk and had lost all human decency, he felt even more the precious simplicity of the Jili village villagers. A few hundred taels of silver was nothing to him now. Better to distribute it among the townspeople to improve their living standards. This would also serve as thanks for the care they had provided to him and little Yen over the days. After all, he was not short of money now, especially since Ma Gu had recently sent him much more than a few hundred taels. Ah Qing, your words will make everyone feel ashamed, Grandpa Zhang sighed. Back in the day, if it weren't for your grandfather's leadership, most of the families here might not have survived. Speaking of great kindnesses, your grandfather was the one who truly saved the lives of everyone in Jili village. If we then just stood by and watched you and little Yen being bullied by those villains, how could we face your grandfather afterwards? So you should keep these silver notes. What we did was merely our duty. Seeing Grandpa Zhang so earnest, as if refusing the silver notes would be an act of ingratitude on his part, Lu Qing thought for a moment, then pulled a single silver note from his hand. All right then, I'll keep this 100 taels. The rest will be my gift to everyone. Seeing that Grandpa Zhang seemed about to say more, Lu Qing directly said, Grandpa Zhang, with my current abilities, do you really worry that I will not be able to earn silver in the future? Grandpa Zhang, thinking of how Lu Qing had easily killed those fierce and evil Black Wolf gang thugs yesterday, and considering his status as a disciple of old Dr. Chan and his association with Patriarch Ma, knew that Lu Qing was no longer the desolate youth he had once been. Today he could stand on his own. Their future achievements were unimaginable to them. Finally, he nodded. All right then, on behalf of everyone, I thank you. Chapter 89. Distributing Silver. Grandpa Zhang, how do you plan to divide these 200 taels of silver? Lu Qing asked. Of course, it will be divided equally. Each household in the village will receive the same amount. Grandpa Zhang replied as if it were obvious. Lu Qing nodded in agreement. Fair division is crucial since the worst fear with money is favoring one over another. Equality in division is the best approach. However, it's not easy to exchange these silver notes for silver, Grandpa Zhang admitted, seeming troubled. Lu Qing thought for a moment and understood the old man's concern. To convert silver notes into silver, one must go to a silver bank. And silver banks were only in county seats. Moreover, letting villagers take the silver notes to the city to exchange for silver was not only daunting for everyone, but even Lu Qing would not feel reassured. With the county seat so far away and carrying such a large amount of silver, if someone with ill intentions were to target them, whether they could safely return was questionable. I was negligent, Grandpa Zhang. Hand me the silver notes, Lu Qing said. I will go see Elder Ma tomorrow and exchange the silver notes for silver. That would be best, Grandpa Zhang replied immediately, handing over the 2 silver notes to Lu Qing. I'll bring the silver to you tomorrow. After Grandpa Zhang left, Lu Qing returned to his room, opened a small chest, and inside, a dazzling silver glow shone. It was a chest full of silver. This chest of silver was one of the gifts Ma Gu had brought recently. Last night, Ma Gu and his men had scoured Happy Village. It was unknown how long Happy Village had accumulated the money without sending it to headquarters, but Ma Gu and his men had reaped a rich harvest. After counting, Ma Gu brought over the share he deemed belonged to Lu Qing. Unable to refuse, Lu Qing accepted it. Lu Qing began to take silver from the chest. The silver Ma Gu had packed was meticulously arranged, mostly consisting of silver ingots. Large ones of 10 taels and small ones of 5 taels. Lu Qing directly took 40 of the 5-tael silver ingots, almost completely emptying the chest of small ingots. Early the next morning, Lu Qing carried the silver to Grandpa Zhang's house. Grandpa Zhang, Lu Qing called out, standing outside Zhang's house. Ah Qing, come in quickly. Grandpa Zhang had not slept well last night, and he stayed home all morning, not going anywhere, just in case Lu Qing came to find him while he was out. It wasn't that he was greedy for the silver, but since the silver was meant for distribution to everyone in the village, it was a matter of great importance, and he did not dare be careless. Lu Qing carried the silver and followed Grandpa Zhang into the house. "Ah Qing, why have you come?" Coincidentally, Grandpa Zhang's family, including his 2 sons and daughters-in-law, were all at home. Seeing Lu Qing enter, everyone stood up, quite surprised, especially Grandpa Zhang's 2 sons, who looked at Lu Qing with a somewhat restrained expression. Yesterday, when Han Wu and the others came, they were present and had personally witnessed how Lu Qing had killed those villains. Thus, the 2 brothers felt an indescribable awe toward Lu Qing. "I've come to deliver the silver," Lu Qing smiled. "Deliver the silver?" Grandpa Zhang's sons and daughters-in-law were puzzled. Lu Qing emptied the bag of silver ingots onto the table, and the dazzling silver light immediately made everyone's eyes shine. In the stunned gaze of Grandpa Zhang's son and daughter-in-law, Lu Qing said, "Grandpa Zhang, I have exchanged all the silver notes into silver. Here are 40 silver ingots, each weighing 5 taels. Please use them to distribute among everyone." All right. I will gather everyone together to distribute the silver right away." Grandpa Zhang was also shocked by the pile of silver, but after all, he had lived for several decades and had more self-control than his son and daughter-in-law, and he quickly regained his composure. "Dad, what do you mean by distributing silver?" At that moment, Grandpa Zhang's eldest son finally reacted. Ah Qing said that he wanted to distribute the silver notes obtained from those criminals yesterday to everyone in the village. "This silver is what he had exchanged at Master Ma's place at the fair," Grandpa Zhang explained. "Are all these silver pieces to be distributed?" Grandpa Zhang's son and daughter-in-law said in surprise. "Don't talk nonsense, you two. Go quickly and call everyone to the ancestral hall. Do not mention distributing the silver. Just say I have something important to discuss with everyone," Grandpa Zhang scolded sharply. "All right, I'll go now." The 2 sons hurriedly ran out. "Grandpa Zhang, I won't get involved in distributing the silver. You can oversee it." Lu Qing then stood up, preparing to leave. "How can that be? The silver is yours. It wouldn't look right if you were not present," Grandpa Zhang said hastily. "No worries, it's just a bit of silver. Don't be too nervous, Grandpa Zhang. Just distribute it normally to everyone. I still have important matters to attend to at my master's place, so I'll not go over." Lu Qing wanted to distribute the silver to make everyone happy, but if he appeared there, he would inevitably have to face a barrage of gratitude and pleasantries. So it was better not to appear. Seeing Lu Qing insist, Grandpa Zhang could only respond, "Well, if there is an emergency at old Dr. Chen's, then you go ahead." Watching Lu Qing leave, Grandpa Zhang sighed. He had guessed why Lu Qing didn't want to go to the ancestral hall. The boy was shy and too embarrassed to face the thanks from his uncles. He didn't know how to counsel him on this matter and just let it be. In the village, Grandpa Zhang still carried considerable authority. When he announced he had an important matter to discuss, it didn't take long for the villagers to gradually gather at the ancestral hall. Even those who were busy in the fields hurried back. "Old Zhang, what's the rush that you are calling everyone over?" Upon arriving at the ancestral hall, the villagers were surprised to see Grandpa Zhang had summoned all the household heads of the village and thought something major had happened again. Some elders immediately called out. Others started to stir upon hearing this. After the events of yesterday, everyone was nervous, and they couldn't handle another scare. "Don't be nervous. I've called you here because there is good news to announce," Grandpa Zhang shouted, signaling everyone not to panic. Behind him on a table, there was a cloth bag, bulging out, with no one knowing what was inside. Next to it were a small scale and scissors, their purpose unknown. "What good news?" Hearing it was good news, everyone finally relaxed and eagerly asked. "Yesterday, Ah Qing obtained some silver notes from those criminals he killed, and he has decided to distribute most of them to everyone." Grandpa Zhang carefully poured out the silver ingots from the bag behind him. "Here, this is the silver Ah Qing exchanged back, totaling 200 taels. In our village, excluding Ah Ching's house, there are 37 households. When averaged out, each household will get about 5 taels and a bit of silver. At the sight of the large pile of shiny silver ingots in the ancestral hall, everyone was initially stunned. Upon hearing Grandpa Zhang's words, they couldn't help but burst into an uproar. Not far away on the hillside, Lu Qing, who was en route to Half Mountain's small courtyard, heard the commotion and smiled. Chapter 90. Little Li, is this the spot where you found the ginseng? Lu Qing surveyed the surroundings, asking the little creature perched on his shoulder. At this moment, he was deep in the mountains, tens of miles away from Jili village. The dense jungle around him was filled with towering trees, emanating a primitive aura. The world inside and outside the mountain truly seemed like two different realms. Since learning that the Black Wolf Gang had been suppressed by the Wei family and couldn't bother him for a while, Lu Qing felt much relieved. He began considering how to use this opportunity to rapidly increase his strength. As long as his power grew, he wouldn't need to fear the likes of the Black Wolf Gang. For now, the easiest aspect for him to improve was his Qi blood power. After understanding the mysteries of Qi blood perfection, there were no bottlenecks left for Lu Qing in the realm of Qi blood. As long as he had enough elixirs, he could unrestrainedly enhance his Qi blood power. However, since his previous cultivation had almost depleted the blood-nourishing elixir his master had made, after some thought, Lu Qing decided to bring Little Li into the mountains to gather the wild ginseng that it had previously found. This was also the reason why Lu Qing was currently in the deep mountains. Ow! Little Li cried out, nodded, and pointed in a certain direction with its paw. Lu Qing immediately activated his superpower to start inspecting the area. Ignoring the common herbs, his target was solely ginseng. After a search, he quickly made a discovery. Ginseng, a precious herb, edible, non-toxic. This ginseng is 50 years old. Looking at the white light emanating from the ginseng in his view, Lu Qing felt somewhat disappointed. This ginseng was not a century old, and the superpower light it emitted was only white, far less precious than the 2 ginsengs Little Li had given him. Without disturbing the newly discovered ginseng, Lu Qing continued his search. A 50-year-old wild ginseng, though still considered precious in outside herb shops, wasn't much in Lu Qing's opinion now, so he decided to look further. It wasn't long before he made another discovery. Ginseng, a precious herb, edible, non-toxic. This ginseng has grown for an average of just 5 years and has mediocre medicinal effects. Unexpectedly, this ginseng was even worse than the previous one, being only 5 years old. It was practically a child among ginsengs. Can't be, is my luck that bad? Looking at the information provided by his superpower, Lu Qing was somewhat dumbfounded. I refuse to believe this. Lu Qing resumed his search. He could have asked Little Li directly, but he chose not to. He was caught up in a somewhat stubborn mindset. Even Little Li, a little beast that didn't understand medicinal herbs, could find 2-century-old ginsengs. Having mastered the 100 Herbs scripture and possessing superpower, could he really not find a century-old ginseng? Subsequently, Lu Qing found a few more ginsengs, but none of them were over 100 years old, the oldest being just 80 years. However, seeing the 80-year-old ginseng emitting a superpower light that was still white light, Lu Qing did not pick it. Could it be that the century-old ginsengs in this area is only the 2 that Little Li dug up? After discovering another 30-year-old ginseng, Lu Qing started to wonder. It shouldn't be, otherwise Little Li wouldn't have brought me here. Lu Qing continued to search and finally, after half an hour, he had a harvest. However, when he saw the ginseng he found this time, he was stunned. Ginseng, a precious herb, non-toxic, edible. This ginseng has grown for a long time, over 200 years. Legend has it, ginseng possesses various miraculous effects, and old enough ginseng seems also to have the ability to gain spiritual wisdom. 200 years. Looking at the ginseng on the ground emitting a reddish glow through the white, Lu Qing's eyes widened. He hadn't expected that, after facing so many failures before with finding only younger ginsengs, He'd suddenly come across such a hefty one. The 200-year-old ginseng was even stronger than the two little Li had picked. Even the ginseng that the Wei family had brought to his master recently, to help treat young Master Wei's body, did not seem to have reached this age. This was truly a rare treasure he was lucky to encounter. This time he had really struck it big. Looking at the ginseng on the ground, Lu Qing forcibly contained his excitement, immediately put down his medicine basket he was carrying, and took out a bundle of red rope and a medicine hoe, ready to start digging. First, Lu Qing tied the red rope around the ginseng. This was a rule of herb gatherers. When encountering rare herbs like ginseng, they had to be tied with red rope first to prevent them from burrowing away during the digging. If it were in his previous life, Lu Qing certainly wouldn't have believed such a thing. But now, he had even experienced events like traveling through time. This world also had strange creatures like Little Li and the strange fish, and the information given by Superpower also mentioned the possibility of ginseng having spiritual wisdom. If he didn't believe it now, that would be foolish. Thus, even though he knew the ginseng in front of him likely had not reached the level of possessing spiritual wisdom, Lu Qing still followed the herb gatherer's convention, first tying the red rope. After tying the red rope, Lu Qing began to dig very carefully. First, he cleared the weeds around it, then he dug slowly with the medicine hoe, following the growth patterns of the ginseng. Throughout the process, Lu Qing dared not be careless. With such old ginseng, even a single root was extremely valuable and had powerful medicinal effects. He was not an insensitive little beast like Little Li. Such a rare and precious herb could cause heartache if accidentally damaged. Luckily, as a martial artist who had reached Qi blood perfection in the martial arts realm, Lu Qing had strong control over his own actions. Under his careful handling, this over 200-year-old old ginseng was perfectly dug out. Looking at the old ginseng in his hands, its roots intact, with not a single damage, Lu Qing couldn't help but smile. The 200-year-old old ginseng, once made into a blood-nourishing and qi-boosting elixir, would definitely be much stronger than the century-old ones. With this ginseng, his days toward reaching perfect blood qi realm could be greatly shortened. Little Li, standing by and seeing Lu Qing's silly smile, was a bit puzzled. It was just digging up a plant, yet this guy was smiling like an idiot. After admiring the ginseng he had dug out for a while, Lu Qing wrapped it in a piece of turf, tied it with red rope, and then placed it in his medicine basket. After finishing all these tasks, he straightened his back, looking at the forest in front of him, his eyes filled with excited light. Since there was a 200-year-old ginseng here, could it be possible that there are even older ones hidden somewhere? Chapter 91. The Strange Valley.
Ginseng, a precious medicinal herb, non-toxic, edible.
This ginseng plant, having grown for many years, has already surpassed a century. It is said that ginseng possesses various magical effects, and sufficiently old ginseng seems even to have the ability to communicate with spirits and develop spiritual wisdom. Looking at the ginseng before him, with information emerging in his mind, Lu Qing showed a smile. Since he had dug up that more than 200-year-old ginseng, his luck seemed to have improved all at once. And he had found 3 more ginseng plants in succession, all of which were over a century old. Slowly digging out this century-old ginseng and placing it into his medicine basket, Lu Qing felt exceptionally good. The medicine basket already contained 4 ginseng plants, plus the one that Little Li had brought from home earlier. 5 ginseng plants, one of 200 years and 4 of 100 years. If all were refined into blood-nourishing pills, it would be more than enough to supply his cultivation to the perfect qi blood realm. What a treasure mountain indeed! Lu Qing looked around and sincerely sighed. He hadn't searched a very large area and yet had found so many century-old ginseng plants, adding to that other medicinal materials he had seen while searching for ginseng. It's easy to imagine how rich the resources of the forest are in medicinal materials. It's not an exaggeration to call it a treasure mountain. However, although the medicinal herbs here are abundant, entering is not easy at all. Terrain like this primitive forest, riddled with insects and snakes and concealed fierce animals, a slight carelessness could result in being bitten and possibly dying deep within the mountains. Lu Qing was able to enter because he is a Qi blood realm martial artist. and he had a medicine bag prepared by his master to repel snakes and insects. Moreover, with Little Lee being a spiritual beast, she seems to have some kind of deterrent ability towards other creatures in the mountain, which made things much more comfortable. For a regular herb gatherer wanting to venture into the depths of the forest, it would be as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Therefore, even if people knew that there were treasures all over the place and medicinal materials filled the mountains, they could only watch from afar and not approach. Of course, this was a good thing for Lu Qing. Only he could freely enter and leave this place, which meant that he could find whatever medicinal materials he needed any time in the future. After gathering enough ginseng for his cultivation, Lu Qing temporarily stopped his search for more ginseng. Besides digging for ginseng, he also wanted to practice the knowledge from the 100 Herb scripture, to see what other herbs in the mountain was like in the wild. Thus, Lu Qing, along with Little Lee, began to wander leisurely through the mountains. With Little Lee and the medicine bag, those poisonous insects and snakes did not dare to come near him. After wandering for a while, he couldn't help but exclaim again that the medicinal herbs in this mountain were indeed plentiful. Just from this short stroll, he had seen no fewer than dozens of different herbs, and all were thriving exceptionally well, full of medicinal properties. Lu Qing also picked some precious herbs that were not commonly seen outside and dug up some of them. His master would often treat the villagers from nearby villages for free on ordinary days, consuming a significant amount of medicinal herbs. Ordinary herbs could be found on the hills near the village. So Lu Qing specifically chose herbs that were not available outside or rarely seen for digging. After digging for a while, Lu Qing discovered another surprise. Sanchi, a precious medicinal herb, non-toxic, for medicinal use. It has the effects of blood circulation and hemostasis and pain relief, an excellent remedy for treating both external and internal injuries. Looking at the robust white light on the medicinal plant before him, Lu Qing was very excited. He hadn't expected to find Sanchi here. This, too, was a very rare type of medicinal material. The famous antiseptic medicine on the rivers and lakes, known as the holy medicine for healing injuries, has Sanchi as its main ingredient. Previously, in order to treat young Master Wei's blood loss, his master had specifically requested Sanchi from the Wei mansion. This tells you how remarkable this herb is. Lu Qing immediately began to dig it up. The light of superpower emanating from this Sanchi, although only white light, was still very rare. After digging it up and taking it back, it would be enough to make a large bottle of antiseptic medicine, which could save lives at critical moments and should not be missed. While digging the Sanchi, Lu Qing also had a hint of doubt in his mind. According to the 100 Herb scripture, ginseng and Sanchi are never supposed to grow in the same place, because the environmental conditions needed for these two types of medicinal herbs are entirely different. Ginseng likes shade and cold, is tolerant of low temperatures, and doesn't like direct sunlight, so the climate of this deep forest indeed suits it. But Sanchi is different. It likes humidity and doesn't tolerate extreme heat or extreme cold, its most suitable growing environment being a place with warm winters and cool summers. Logically, it shouldn't appear here, because Lu Qing knows from memory that Jili village gets snow in the winter. What could be the reason for Sanchi to defy its growth habits and appear in this forest? After digging up the Sanchi and placing it in his medicine basket, Lu Qing fell into deep thought. Now that he thought about it, indeed something seemed off. The medicinal herbs in this forest are abundantly rich to a surprising degree. So many century-old ginseng could appear all at once, and other herbs too were growing exceptionally strong, and now even the Sanchi, which shouldn't be here, was thriving so well. Previously, Lu Qing thought it was because the environment was good and seldom visited by humans, that there were so many abundant herbs. But now, seeing that ginseng and Sanchi grow in the same area, he finally sensed something was awry. His first thought was, could there be some mystery in these mountains? Thinking over it, Lu Qing looked at the black little beast beside him. Little Lee, you've been active in this mountain for so long. Have you discovered anything special nearby? Chapter 92. A special place? Little Lee looked puzzled, tilting its head at Lu Qing with a look of confusion in its eyes, clearly not understanding his point. Seeing this, Lu Qing pondered for a moment and continued, I mean, is there any place nearby that feels different to you? Perhaps more dangerous? Or somewhere that feels particularly comfortable? This time, Little Lee seemed to grasp some understanding. It tilted its head, thought for a moment, then bit the corner of Lu Qing's robe and pointed in a certain direction. Was there really such a place? Lu Qing was startled. He looked at Little Lee's actions and asked, Do you mean you want me to follow you there? The black little beast nodded. Is that place dangerous? If it was dangerous, he had no intention of going there. It wouldn't be worth jeopardizing his own safety out of mere curiosity. The black little beast shook its head. Lu Qing thought it over and decided to trust Little Lee's intuition. All right, let's go then. Walk slowly. Otherwise, I won't be able to keep up. With that, Little Lee hopped and skipped ahead, leading the way, while Lu Qing followed behind, channeling his chi blood. Although they were in the mountains, they moved at a decent speed, neither too fast nor too slow. Soon, Lu Qing, following Little Lee, arrived at a valley. Is it up ahead? Seeing Little Lee stop, Lu Qing asked. Little Lee nodded and gestured with its paw, indicating that this was the special place it had mentioned. Lu Qing observed the surroundings and felt no apparent danger. On the contrary, upon arriving here, he felt an overwhelming sense of relaxation and mental clarity, as if even his brain had become significantly clearer. He was invigorated, realizing that they had indeed come to the right place. Not to mention anything else, just the quality of the air that made his mind clearer and relaxed his body spoke volumes about the extraordinariness of this place. Seeing Lu Qing standing motionless, Little Lee, somewhat puzzled, tugged at his robe and then took the lead towards the valley. Lu Qing hastened to follow. As they entered the valley, Lu Qing was stunned. He saw a valley vibrant with the chirping of birds and the fragrance of flowers, with water bubbling through, a place bustling with life. Inside and outside the valley seemed almost like two different worlds. Little Lee seemed quite familiar with this valley. As soon as they entered, it took Lu Qing straight through to the deeper part. Upon reaching the end of the valley, there was a waterfall hanging in the middle of the valley, under which was a clear blue pond. The falling water splashed endlessly into the pond. Ah! Little Lee stood on a large rock in front of the waterfall, pointing at the waterfall and calling out to Lu Qing. You're saying there's something inside? Lu Qing looked at the waterfall in surprise. The waterfall wasn't very big, and the curtain of water was thin. He soon noticed something peculiar. Behind the water curtain, there indeed seemed to be a cave entrance. Ah! Little Lee called out again. Are you saying I should go in? Lu Qing asked. Little Lee nodded. Lu Qing fell into deep thought. It wasn't that he didn't trust Little Lee, but blindly exploring a cave without knowing anything about it carried significant risk. Not to mention, this valley already looked quite odd. Who knew what could be inside the cave? What if there was some strange creature inside, and he was just walking into a trap? Little Lee, how about we go in together? Lu Qing suggested after some thought. Little Lee, being a red light spiritual beast, was far stronger than him. Having it by his side would greatly increase his sense of security. Little Lee immediately shook its head, looking at the water curtain with disdain. Lu Qing then remembered that this creature naturally detested water. Apart from drinking, it absolutely refused to touch water any more than necessary. Last time Little Lee and Little Yen were playing at home, rolling around and getting covered in dust, Lu Qing wanted to give it a bath, but it almost tore the house down in protest. He finally wiped it down hastily with a wet cloth. Just like that, the little creature threw a tantrum and ignored Lu Qing for quite some time. It's okay. I'll carry you inside, and I won't let you get wet at all, Lu Qing said with a smile. Besides, you want to know what's inside, don't you? Upon hearing this, Little Lee showed a hesitant expression. Seeing this, Lu Qing immediately laughed. He knew that this guy hated water so much, he definitely hadn't been inside before. And judging by its demeanor, there was clearly something inside that was attracting it. Whatever could make water-hating Little Lee so fixated must be extraordinary. You should know, Little Lee wouldn't even spare a glance at something like century-old ginseng. Don't worry, I'll wrap you with my clothes so your fur won't get wet at all, Lu Qing said. Seeing Lu Qing's assurance, and coupled with the fact that things inside the cave really attracted it, Little Li struggled for a bit, but eventually nodded reluctantly. Seeing that the little guy finally agreed, Lu Qing immediately took off the medicine basket from his back and placed it on the nearby dashur. Then he took off his outer garment and folded it into a nest shape. Upon seeing this, Little Li immediately burrowed inside. It didn't mind that the clothes carried Lu Qing's scent. After all, at home, it slept in the same room with Little Yen and Lu Qing. Its nest was even made from Lu Qing's old clothes, so it was already used to it. Seeing Little Li burrow into the clothes, Lu Qing slung the war saber on his back. Yes, this time he had brought the war saber with him into the mountains. After all, aside from venomous insects and snakes, there might also be jackals and other ferocious animals. He couldn't possibly leave his handy weapon behind. After securing the war saber and attaching the medicine hoe at his waist, Lu Qing then picked up Little Li, stepped back a few feet, and with an eruption of qi and blood power, he sprinted and jumped towards the waterfall. The moment his body touched the water curtain, Lu Qing bent his waist, curled up entirely, protecting Little Li within his arms, and rolled steadily to land behind the water curtain, into the cave entrance. Upon entering the cave entrance, Lu Qing immediately drew the medicine hoe at his waist, ready for anything that might leap out. However, luckily, it was only his over-imagination. Nothing emerged from inside. Lu Qing breathed a sigh of relief. Inevitably, he had seen too many movies in his past life where dangers burst out upon opening such secluded portals. He definitely didn't want to experience that himself. Feeling Lu Qing stop, Little Li poked its head out from his embrace. "See, I told you I wouldn't get you wet." Lu Qing checked and found that apart from his outer garment that got a little wet, Little Li wasn't damp at all. On the contrary, it was he who now looked quite drenched. However, Lu Qing didn't mind these. If he wanted, by stimulating the qi and blood within his body, he could dry the clothes in no time. But currently, with the situation in the cave still unclear, he didn't want to waste his qi and blood power on such trifles. Wow! Little Li, realizing it indeed hadn't gotten wet, was very happy. "Let's go, let's head in." Lu Qing looked into the cave, couldn't make out anything, and sensing no danger, decided to go in. After all, now that they were here, how could they not take a look? He took out a fire lighter, lit it, and then carrying Little Li, walked slowly inside. However, Lu Qing soon realized this was superfluous. Within a few steps and after turning a bend, he found that the cave was gradually lighting up. The cave walls on both sides, resembling stalactites, sparkled with an enchanting glow. Looking at the fire lighter in his hand, Lu Qing chuckled, extinguished and tucked it away, and continued walking forward with Little Li. Interestingly, although the cave entrance was located behind the waterfall, the cave itself wasn't damp at all but rather very dry. This very much pleased Little Li, who climbed out from Lu Qing's embrace and resumed its position on his shoulder. The cave was quite deep but not dark. The further they went, the brighter the phosphorescent glow from the cave walls. Lu Qing also specifically used his superpower to investigate and discovered that these were a unique type of luminescent mineral, harmless to the human body, before reassuredly continuing forward. As they ventured deeper into the cave, Lu Qing also felt the continued clarity of mind he had been experiencing since entering the valley was getting stronger. Even without Little Li's reminder, he vaguely sensed that something deep within the cave was mysteriously drawing him in. Finally, after several twists and turns and a considerable walk, both man and beast felt the space ahead suddenly open up. When Lu Qing saw the scene before him, he was stunned. Chapter 93, Great Opportunity, Earth Vein Spirit Liquid. What is this? Lu Qing stared at what was before him, his heart filled with shock. He saw a wide and tall cavern suddenly opening up before him and Little Li. Within the cavern, the walls around and the ground below had the quality of white jade, etched with complicated and primitive mysterious runes that looked extremely mystical. In the middle of the cavern there was a large stone platform. On the platform hung a shimmering stalactite, its pointed end directly above the center of the platform. Lu Qing was astonished by the nearly fully jade-like chamber that presented itself before him. He had never imagined that such a peculiar place could exist within the belly of this mountain. There was no danger like he had anticipated. Instead, at the end of the cave, there was an unimaginably jade-like chamber. Even little Li was somewhat stunned. It did not expect that the place it had long been thinking about would be such a glittering location. Standing outside the jade cave, Lu Qing did not enter immediately. His sense of clarity strengthened as he approached this place, and with it a growing sense of caution. Such an extraordinary chamber didn't seem like a natural formation at a glance. Since it was man-made, it was difficult to say it did not have any protective measures. Although he didn't feel any danger at the moment, he still did not want to rush in recklessly. However, what Lu Qing did not expect was that at this moment, Little Li left his shoulder and darted towards the interior of the cavern. "Wait a second, Little Li!" Lu Qing shouted in alarm. What shocked him even more was the instant flurry of Little Li about to enter the chamber. A faint light barrier flared up, intending to stop Little Li right then and there. Just as Lu Qing thought Little Li might be injured, a flash of dark light suddenly appeared, and the light barrier was effortlessly torn by Little Li, vanishing like a popped bubble. "Ha!" Watching Little Li safely land inside the cavern, Lu Qing's mouth hung open, hardly able to believe it. The jade cave was so mystical. He thought its defensive power must be formidable, but Little Li had just bypassed it with such ease. "Ayo?" Little Li stood inside the cavern, looking back at Lu Qing with a somewhat puzzled gaze. It seemed to not understand what he had been shouting about just a moment ago. "It's nothing." Seeing that Little Li had been inside the cavern for some time with nothing else happening, Lu Qing realized that he had been overly cautious. As a spiritual beast, Little Li had a much greater ability to sense danger than himself. Since it hadn't felt any danger, there probably really was none. Lu Qing stepped forward and tried to walk into the cavern, unsure if the light barrier, once destroyed, could regenerate. This time, he entered the cavern smoothly, encountered no resistance whatsoever. Upon truly stepping into the cavern, the sense of clarity in Lu Qing's mind increased again. His spirit felt as if it had been dusted clean, and it was greatly refreshing. When pondering any issue, his thoughts moved much quicker. Peculiar light flashed in Lu Qing's eyes. Even without other treasures in the cave, the sense of clarity emanating from the cavern alone was already a significant gain. He felt that if he could cultivate here, there might be great benefits for him. Cultivation matters could wait for later. Right now, Lu Qing was more interested in the items in the cavern. Little Li was already restless and, seeing that he had finally entered, quickly pulled him towards the stone platform in the center. Following Little Li's will, Lu Qing arrived at the stone platform. The platform was half a person's height, and like the walls and ground around it, it was nearly jade-like. Atop the stone platform, mysterious patterns were similarly engraved. In the center was a smooth depression, filled with a liquid resembling white jade. Seeing this liquid, Lu Qing looked up at the stalactite column hanging above the platform, speculating that the liquid must have dripped down from there. He concentrated on the liquid on the stone platform. After a while, a faint golden glow emerged from the white jade liquid. Earth Vein Spirit Liquid. A rare treasure liquid, non-toxic, and consumable. This spiritual liquid is indeed a rare treasure liquid, able to revive the dead, mend bones, extend life, and improve innate talent and potential in both humans and beasts, defying fate itself. It is rumored that magic users, by utilizing the landscape, can inscribe arrays, sort the Earth's energy, and condense the essence of the Earth Vein to form this treasure liquid. Earth Vein Spirit Liquid can be consumed directly or used to craft elixirs. Its uses are boundless. Golden Light. When Lu Qing saw the superpower light emerging from the white jade liquid, he was already stunned. He never witnessed an item exhibiting golden superpower light before. He knew that even Little Li, being such a miraculous spiritual beast, in his eyes, merely emitted a red light. But after reading the information provided by the superpower inspection, He was utterly dumbfounded. Reviving the dead, mending bones, extending life, improving talent, increasing potential, defying fate. Each term, if found associated with any item, would instantly turn it into a highly sought-after treasure. Yet now they were all used to describe the white jade liquid in the stone platform. It clearly showed how precious the earth vein spirit liquid was. Suddenly, Lu Qing looked at the earth vein spirit liquid with burning desire. Such a treasure liquid truly deserved its status as a rare treasure. Compared to it, ginseng and other herbs were completely insignificant. It took quite a while for Lu Qing's excited heart to gradually calm down. He stopped little Li from wanting to scoop up the earth vein spirit liquid with its paws. This kind of treasure liquid should not be used so carelessly. Losing even a trace would be a wasteful loss that could cause immense heartache. Taking a few deep breaths, he forced himself to calm down and temporarily removed his thoughts from the earth vein spirit liquid. He noticed another important piece of information from the recently inspected text. Magic user. This cave had been created by a magic user. What sort of person could possess mana? Could it be the mysterious innate grandmaster spoken of by his master or even a higher existence? Lu Qing's heart was thrilled beyond words. Whichever it was, this indicated that the cultivation path of this world had a much higher ceiling than he had imagined. For him, this was extremely good news. After pondering for a while, Lu Qing began to examine the cave chamber. Since this place was specifically arranged by a magic user, perhaps there wasn't just this single chamber. Indeed, after some searching, Lu Qing discovered a secret on one side of the chamber. Hidden door. A purposely built stone gate, behind which seems to be a whole new world. This hidden door has no mechanism. One simply needs to push hard to open it. Seeing that there was no mechanism, Lu Qing immediately stood in front of the door and, invigorating his chi blood, pushed against the hidden door. The hidden door was also made of jadeized stone, quite heavy. Fortunately, Lu Qing was barely able to push it. As he gradually exerted force, the hidden door finally began to slowly open. Chapter 94. The Unique Jade Scroll. As the stone gate was slowly pushed open, Lu Qing gradually made out the scene inside. To his shock, what he saw startled him. Behind the stone gate was a rather small stone room, and directly opposite the door, a figure sat cross-legged on a stone bed. The sudden appearance of someone behind the door really scared Lu Qing quite a bit. Fortunately, he quickly realized that the figure showed no signs of life, and the visible face had become skeletal, which allowed him to heave a big sigh of relief. At the same time, he couldn't help but mock himself internally. He never imagined that, after being on guard for so long against ambushes when opening doors, he still couldn't avoid this scare. Knowing that the person opposite had been dead for who knows how long, Lu Qing then confidently entered. He didn't touch the skeleton but instead made a complete round of the stone room. The space behind the door wasn't too large, divided into 3 stone chambers, each about the size of a normal room. Apart from the chamber with the skeleton, based on their setups, one appeared to be a quiet room, while the other resembled an alchemy room. Unfortunately, whether it was the quiet room or the alchemy room, they were both empty with hardly anything left. There were some jade bottles in the alchemy room, but after Lu Qing checked them, he found nothing inside, resulting in no gains at all. After inspecting the stone chambers, Lu Qing's attention finally settled on the skeleton. At first glance, he noticed that the skeleton's bones were somewhat translucent, resembling jade in appearance. He was shaken, understanding that in life, this skeleton must have belonged to an incredibly powerful cultivator. The second realm of martial arts cultivation, the muscle-bone realm, is specifically for tempering muscles and bones. But in the inheritance Lu Qing had received, there was no mention that upon reaching perfection in the muscle-bone realm, one could cultivate one's bones to be like jade. Therefore, this skeleton must have been from a warrior far beyond the muscle-bone realm, even beyond the postnatal realm. Could this be the mysterious being who created this jade cave? This thought flickered through Lu Qing's mind. He began to examine the skeleton with concentration. Before long, a dense red light surfaced on the skeleton. Innate realm skeleton. This skeleton turned to this state after the death of an innate realm expert. The soul has dissipated, but the skeleton remains intact. An innate realm expert's bones, tempered by innate energy, can withstand 1,000 years without decaying. This skeleton's master seems to have died attempting to break through a challenge, with his essence, chi, and spirit burned out. Reading the information that appeared with the skeleton, Lu Qing then understood that this was not the mysterious existence he had imagined who created this cave chamber. Instead, it was an unknown innate realm expert. After all, even a tiny bit of earth vein spiritual liquid left by the cave's mysterious creator was a golden light item. If it had been his skeleton, how could it possibly only emit a red light? He also had no idea why this innate realm expert had come to this place or how he had failed his breakthrough and died. The unfortunate part was that there wasn't even a book left here, making it impossible for him to glean any information. He had thought there would be unexpected findings, but aside from a skeleton, there was nothing else in the stone chamber. Lu Qing couldn't help but feel some disappointment. After sighing, Lu Qing quickly put himself back into good spirits. His gains from this trip into the mountains were surely enough. He had not only dug up so many century-old ginsengs but also acquired earth vein spiritual liquid that would drive anyone insane with desire. If he were still not content, it would be considered overly greedy. After calming himself down, Lu Qing's gaze landed on the skeleton once again. He was debating whether he should lay it to rest properly. Logically, it was best for the skeleton to remain here. After all, the stone chamber was immaculate, and even if left for hundreds of years more, the skeleton would not change in the slightest. However, Lu Qing would undoubtedly be visiting this cave often in the future. Even though it didn't scare him, having to face a skeleton every day still made him uneasy. So after some thought, he decided to go ahead and properly bury the skeleton. Having made up his mind, Lu Qing gave 3 respectful bows to the skeleton, apologized in advance, and then began to prepare to move it out. However, just as he moved the skeleton slightly, he suddenly heard a clatter as something fell from the skeleton. He initially thought he had accidentally dismantled a bone from the skeleton and was about to apologize when he looked down and found that what had fallen to the ground did not seem to be a bone. It seemed to be a long, square jade stone. Curious, Lu Qing picked it up. Then he saw that it was indeed a beautiful piece of jade. On it were several strange patterns. Looking at the patterns on the jade, Lu Qing felt they seemed familiar. After thinking for a moment, it suddenly hit him. Wasn't this the same as the patterns carved on the walls of the cave outside? Lu Qing was immediately startled. Those patterns outside must have been carved by the mysterious being who created the cave. Could this jade have something to do with them? Lu Qing quickly activated his superpower and concentrated on the jade in his hand. After a while, a dense red light emerged from the jade. Inheritance Jade Scroll, a type of jade scroll that can record and pass on information. It is said that those who have cultivated divine thought can inscribe information on certain special jade scrolls, leaving behind an inheritance to ensure its confidentiality. Without cultivating divine thought and the corresponding technique to unlock it, it is extremely difficult to obtain the information on the Jade Scroll. Would you like to download? Red light. When Lu Qing saw the superpower light emerging from the jade in his hand, he was taken aback. He knew this object probably had little to do with the mysterious being who had created the Jade Cave. But he was still very excited. According to the information given by his superpower, he knew this might just be what he had been searching for. He immediately chose to download. And based on past experience, he firmly focused on the Jade Scroll in his hand. Download in progress, current progress, 1%, 2%, 3%, 97%, 98%, 99%, 100%. Download complete. Would you like to learn? Cultivation technique found. Would you like to simulate? The information download inside the Jade Scroll was much slower than Lu Qing had imagined. It took a full quarter of an hour before he saw it was complete. Then he saw that after the download was complete, his superpower actually gave him 2 options. One asked whether he wanted to learn the information inside. The other inquired whether he wanted to simulate the cultivation technique. This meant that the Jade Scroll contained not only ordinary information but also a cultivation technique inheritance. At this, Lu Qing was truly overjoyed. Even if the Jade Scroll wasn't left by the mysterious being who opened the Jade Cave, it must be extremely precious. Otherwise, the unknown innate realm expert wouldn't have kept it close by even before death. Therefore, the cultivation technique inheritance it contained must be invaluable. He immediately made a decision. He chose to simulate the cultivation technique while learning the other information. As he made his choice, Lu Qing immediately felt a flood of information rushing into his mind. He closed his eyes, familiar with the process, and silently received the information. After a long while, when he opened his eyes again, they were filled with delight. Chapter 95. The Regret of Innate Perfection Experts. This inheritance Jade Scroll is indeed magical. Such a small piece can record so much information. Lu Qing's eyes were filled with amazement. He had already received most of the inheritance information from the Jade Scroll, and this information brought him great surprises. It was a bit different from what he had previously speculated. This inheritance Jade Scroll was not left by the mysterious being who had opened the Jade Cave, but was made by the departed innate realm expert before him. However, when he made this Jade Scroll, he added a little bit of insight about the mysterious runes that he had comprehended from the outside cave, which made the patterns of the two somewhat similar. From the inheritance Jade Scroll, Lu Qing also learned many pieces of information he wanted to know. First, it was about the innate strong person before him. According to the information left by this innate strong person in the Jade Scroll, his name was Li Weitian, who was once a world-renowned martial arts expert, awe-inspiring all around. Even among the innate realm, he was considered one of the most top-notch existences. With his immensely strong cultivation, he once suppressed the innate realm experts of neighboring nations, dazzling all around. Unfortunately, even as an innate realm expert, there came a day when his lifespan was exhausted. If one could not break through to a higher realm, an innate realm expert could only live up to 300 years at most. In his later years, Li Weitian traveled everywhere looking for an opportunity to break through. And finally, when his lifespan was nearly exhausted, he found this mysterious place. When he first discovered this Jade Cave, Li Weitian was extremely delighted. Because from the runes left by the mysterious being who had opened the cave, he spied a chance to break through to a higher realm. At that time, with his lifespan running out, he immediately entered closed-door cultivation in the cave, hoping to break through. Unfortunately, nearing the end of his lifespan, his spirit was not at its peak. Also, deciphering the defensive measures of this place consumed too much energy, and he was severely injured. Thus, even with the help of the Earth Vein Spirit Liquid, he ultimately failed to break through, his essence and spirit nearly exhausted without reaching that higher realm. Before dying, he recorded all this information into the Inheritance Jade Scroll, as a way to account for his splendid life. In the last part of the information, Lu Qing saw a message left by Li Weitian. Alas, in the early years of my youth, I enjoyed fighting with others, always striving to distinguish myself in every endeavor. After gaining success in cultivation, I waged battles in all directions, challenged renowned families across the world, defeated all my enemies, and was known far and wide, living in endless glory. I was so proud throughout my life, my fame overshadowed many of my contemporaries, who became mere backdrops. In my later years, I suddenly realized the futility of pursuing fame, having wasted much of my time, leaving me with little left of my lifespan. Thus, even though I encountered opportunities and saw a chance to break through, I couldn't overcome the obstacles due to the limitations of my lifespan and failed to step into that supremely mysterious realm. Regret, remorse, resentment. I hope that future generations take my story as a warning. In the pursuit of cultivation, one should focus on the cultivation itself and not get lost in the quest for fame and fortune, wasting precious time. Remember, be mindful. After reading the last words left by Li Weitian, Lu Qing fell into silence. He could feel Li Weitian's reluctance and regret from his words. He had already touched the higher realm he had dreamed of, But because he had little time left, a breakthrough was impossible. He could not imagine how regretful Li Weitian felt at that moment. But from his words, it was evident that he deeply regretted wasting too much time fighting for fame and fortune during his prime years. Cultivation is the essence. Yet unfortunately, this senior, Li Weitian, came to realize it too late. Lu Qing sighed with some regret. However, it must be said that the reason Li Weitian was so powerful, dominating his contemporaries to the point where other martial arts experts could hardly lift their heads, was not unrelated to his combative nature. Not constantly battling with rivals, he might not have fully unlocked his innate talent and reached the peak of innate. So, it's hard to say whether his aggressive nature was his making or his undoing. Li Weitian, if I have a chance in the future, I'll try to find out more about your life's deeds. In the Jade Scroll, Li Weitian had only given a brief introduction of himself, without delving into specific details. Additionally, Lu Qing's knowledge of this world was also pitifully limited. Thus, he had never heard of this notable figure. Moreover, looking at the skeleton, it was unclear how many years it had been since his death. Most things in this world cannot withstand the test of time. Having passed for so long, it was uncertain how many stories about him were still circulating. After a moment of reflection, Lu Qing turned his attention to other information. In the information left by Li Weitian, there was also some mention of the origins of this cave. According to Li Weitian, this cave had been in existence for a very long time. He had occasionally acquired an ancient book and, based on the few words left in it, eventually found this place. Originally, there were some defensive arrays here, but due to the age when he arrived, the power of the arrays was almost exhausted, and he had dismantled them one by one. Even so, dismantling the arrays had taken a toll on him, which was one of the reasons he ultimately failed to break through. At this point, Lu Qing finally understood. No wonder he and little Li had not encountered any dangers coming here. He had found it odd that such a mysterious place lacked any defenses. It turned out that this innate realm predecessor had cleared the obstacles for them. Li Weitian stated in the Jade Scroll that upon first arriving in the cave, he was shocked by the scene inside. The first thing that struck him was the spiritual liquid condensed on the stone platform, a rare treasure liquid known as Earth Vein Spirit Liquid, which he had only read about in ancient texts. This spiritual liquid could bring the dead to life, rejuvenate bones, extend life, and improve cultivation talent, an invaluable treasure coveted by many martial artists. Unexpectedly, it appeared in such an unremarkable mountain belly. Unfortunately for ordinary people, postnatal realm martial artists, and even ordinary innate realm experts, such treasure liquid held unimaginable benefits. But for someone like Li Weitian who had reached the limit of innate realm and whose life was nearing its end, its uses were limited. Because the lifespan limit of innate perfection experts was set by the heaven and earth laws, even the rare Earth Vein Spirit Liquid could not break through these limitations. Thus, even if Li Weitian consumed all the spiritual liquid from the stone platform, it would at most heal the injuries he had sustained entering the cave, without bringing any additional benefits. However, aside from the Earth Vein Spirit Liquid, what truly astonished Li Weitian was the mysterious rune inscribed in the cave by the mysterious being who opened the Jade Cave, used to condense the Earth Vein Spirit Liquid. From these runes, Li Weitian glimpsed a mysterious power that he had long pursued, belonging only to a realm above innate. Coincidentally, his life was coming to an end at that time, so ignoring everything else, he drank all the Earth Vein Spirit Liquid that took 20 years to condense per drop and had accumulated for nearly 1,000 years. He then closed himself in meditation, hoping to break through with his newfound insight and the medicinal power of the Earth Vein Spirit Liquid. Unexpectedly, he still fell short in the end. He ultimately failed to break through, with his spirit exhausted, never reaching that mysterious realm above innate. Chapter 96. The Secret of Innate Breakthrough, Rune Heritage. After reading about Li Weitian's experiences, Lu Qing fell silent once more. He dismissed his previous thoughts, feeling that this person's luck was incredibly poor. If his life could have been longer, or if he had arrived here earlier, then he would have had enough time to comprehend runes here. In that case, perhaps he would have gained more insights and broken through to a level above innate. Unfortunately, there are no ifs in this world. Fate plays such cruel tricks, and Li Weitian, of all people, found the Jade Cave Chamber only when his life was nearing its end. In the end, he could only fight a desperate battle. But he lost. This experience of seeing hope amid despair, and then plunging back into despair, Li Weitian didn't fall into madness in the end, and was able to calmly record his last words, advising those who came after him to take him as a warning. Such nobility could only be expected from a martial arts expert who had reached innate perfection. Even when death was truly imminent, he was still able to face it gracefully. 97%, 98%, 99%, 100%. Cultivation technique simulation complete. Would you like to learn it? As Lu Qing remained silent, a prompt also appeared in his view. Perhaps because the cultivation technique Li Weitian left behind was particularly mysterious, this simulation took much longer than usual. Lu Qing stared at the prompt in his view and silently chose yes. The next moment, a flood of cultivation technique information and insights surged into his mind. Lu Qing closed his eyes, and it was a long time before he awoke from the insights. So it's just the innate methods? With enlightenment in his eyes, Lu Qing muttered to himself. Indeed, the cultivation techniques Li Weitian left in the Jade Scroll were all of innate level, also his life's proud special skills. As for the lower-level postnatal techniques, there were none. Li Weitian was proud. In his view, anyone qualified to access his Jade Scroll information must at least be a martial arts expert who had stepped into the innate realm, having formed divine soul power. Such martial arts experts wouldn't care for mere postnatal realm techniques. He also disdained to include such low-level techniques in his inheritance Jade Scroll. Li Weitian never imagined that there would be an anomaly like Lu Qing in the future, who could access the information in the inheritance Jade Scroll without having divine soul power. Is the key to breaking through from postnatal to innate all about forming one's own divine soul power, using it to sense heaven and earth primordial qi, breaking barriers, and inducing energy into the body? After receiving the cultivation technique information, Lu Qing immediately understood the critical points for the breakthrough from postnatal to innate. But understanding was useless. The saying goes, a strong body is needed for a strong soul. Only a sufficiently robust body can nurture a powerful spirit. To form one's own divine soul power, the physical body must reach an extremely tyrannical realm, and only then is there a glimmer of possibility. According to the path of martial arts cultivation, this means reaching postnatal realm perfection, where chi blood, tendons, bones, and inner organs all reach the human limit. Only then, through repeatedly tempering the spirit with secret techniques, might one possibly break through the limit and comprehend divine soul power. Lu Qing was currently only at a small success in the chi blood realm, far from the realm of postnatal perfection. So, although he had obtained Li Weitian's innate level cultivation inheritance, he was still far from qualified to cultivate it. He would need to progress step by step, reaching postnatal realm perfection before he could cultivate these innate methods. But no matter what, Lu Qing's gains were still tremendous. At least, with these several innate methods, his future cultivation would never lack techniques. The nourishing body boxing taught by his master was already sufficient for him to cultivate to the internal organ realm. Now that he had the innate methods, moving forward he just needed to peacefully cultivate, assisted by his superpower, and achieving the innate realm would not be wishful thinking. With a very positive mood, Lu Qing took Li Weitian's remains outside the valley, buried them properly, and then returned to the cave. After returning to the cave, he still didn't touch the earth vein spiritual liquid. Instead, he stood in front of the cave wall, observing the mysterious patterns carved into the jadeized wall. In the Inheritance Jade Scroll, Li Weitian highly praised these mysterious patterns, calling them runes, and from them, he deduced a bit of the mysteries above the innate level. According to Li Weitian's last words before his death, if his life limit had come a bit later, giving him enough time to ponder these runes, he would certainly have been able to break through his limits and step into the realm above innate. This inevitably made Lu Qing curious about these mysterious patterns too. He wanted to try whether his superpower could discern anything from them. Activating his superpower, Lu Qing concentrated, intently staring at those mysterious patterns. He looked at them for a long time. A quarter of an hour passed, and just when Lu Qing thought that even his superpower could not penetrate the mysteries of these mysterious patterns, finally, he saw a dense golden light emanating from the mysterious patterns. Array Dao Rune, mysterious runes engraved by a magic user, containing mana, can draw and organize earth energy, gathering the essence of earth veins. The rune path, created by a great divine power who studied the patterns of all things in heaven and earth, naturally possesses mysterious powers that can communicate with all things. The path of runes varies infinitely. Different runes combined can exert unimaginable powers. Inheritance discovered. Initiate simulation download? Lu Qing was stunned. Then, a surge of elation welled up from within. The information about the runes that appeared didn't disturb his composure. After all, the information left by Li Weitian had prepared him somewhat, and he knew these mysterious patterns possessed mysterious powers. But the last prompt caught him entirely by surprise. He hadn't expected that these mysterious patterns contained an inheritance. Indeed, it was an inheritance, not a technique. Lu Qing noted the phrasing used by his superpower. That which could be termed an inheritance must be quite complete. He didn't hesitate for a moment and chose to simulate the download. Then he stared intently at the mysterious patterns in front of him as never before. Beginning simulation download. Current progress. 1%, 2%. The progress bar in his view was jumping very slowly, but Lu Qing wasn't in a hurry. The slower the simulation download of the superpower, the more precious the inheritance concealed within the runes. When the progress bar in his view jumped to 10%, it stopped and didn't move again. Lu Qing paused, pondered for a moment, then moved to another part of the cave wall and continued observing the runes there. Sure enough, before long, the progress bar in his view started moving again. In this way, whenever the progress bar stopped moving, Lu Qing changed his location to observe other runes. By the time he had scanned all the visible runes in the cave, he finally saw the progress bar in his view jump to the end. 97%, 98%, 99%, 100%. Simulation download complete. Initiate learning? Looking at the prompt in his view, Lu Qing, filled with excitement, chose to learn. Chapter 97 Learning from the Nature of the Universe, the Rune Path. As Lu Qing chose to learn, a torrent of information and insights once again surged forth in his mind. And this time, the tide of insight was unprecedentedly tumultuous. So much so that Lu Qing had to brace himself unprepared, steadying his heart and spirit, wholly receiving the information. To join my divine talisman sect, one must take heaven and earth as teachers, observe the patterns of all things in the world, sketch spirit talismans, and connect with all things. This was unlike any previous learning experience. This time, when he began learning superpower, a vast voice echoed in Lu Qing's mind. As if he were listening to the sound of the Tao, his heart and spirit couldn't help but be immersed in it. Little Li, seeing Lu Qing close his eyes and stand there, looked at him for a moment and then paid him no mind. Two-legged creatures often do this, and it was long accustomed to it. Little Li continued to drool over the stone platform. It could feel that the thing on the stone platform was greatly beneficial to it. Unfortunately, the two-legged creature wasn't allowing it to touch it yet, so it could only look on and salivate. The information and insights Lu Qing was receiving this time lasted for a very long time. So long that Little Li raised its head several times to see if he had fallen asleep. Finally, Lu Qing opened his eyes, his face carrying an expression of disbelief. To take heaven and earth and all things as teachers, could it be that the rune path is different from the cultivation of martial arts, forming its own unique cultivation technique? Lu Qing was filled with shock. The mysteries contained within these patterns held a legacy far more extraordinary than he had imagined. It was a completely different and unique system of cultivation, in stark contrast to martial arts cultivation. Martial arts cultivation began with the tempering of qi blood, sinews, and inner organs, pursuing the ultimate strength of the physical body. Ultimately, by tempering the divine soul power, breaking through the barriers, merging inside and outside, causing to enter the body, achieving the innate. The rune path, however, did not start with a strong pursuit of physical strength. What it emphasized was the understanding of the patterns of heaven, earth, and all things. From these, one could comprehend the essence of runes. Once the essence was understood, power would naturally come under control. Everything would fall into place without needing to be forcibly pursued. Thus, the rune path required an extraordinarily high level of spiritual nature. Those without sufficient spiritual nature could ponder it their whole lives. Let alone achieving anything, they might not even be able to enter the door. I had thought that in martial arts cultivation, among 10 martial practitioners, it would be difficult for even one to comprehend the secret of the Chi-blood connection and step into the Chi-blood realm. Such a low probability was already dire enough. To think that the rune path is 1,000 times more difficult than martial arts, with only 1 in 10,000 individuals possessing the talent for cultivation. It truly is incredibly difficult. Lu Qing exclaimed. The difficulty of beginning the rune path was unbelievably high. Compared to it, martial arts cultivation seemed quite straightforward. At the very least, martial practitioners, even if they couldn't step into the Chi-blood realm, still possessed good physical qualities and proficient fighting skills, much stronger than the average person. But with the rune path, if one couldn't even begin, if one couldn't comprehend the essence of the runes, then they weren't much different from ordinary people. Lu Qing even wondered if the reason the legacy of the rune path had vanished without a trace, with even a strong master of the perfect innate realm like Li Weitian never having heard of it, leaving behind just this jade cave, was because the difficulty of beginning was just too high. Regrettably, the legacy he had obtained did not mention this point. All he knew was that this legacy was left by a mysterious sect called the Divine Talisman Sect, with more detailed information not left behind. The guiding principle of this Divine Talisman Sect was to take heaven and earth as teachers and to comprehend one's own unique runes from all things in the world, valuing a natural and unrestrained approach. The sect acted capriciously. Otherwise, they wouldn't have disappeared, leaving behind such an opportunity in the Jade Cave for those fated to find it. However, this means I'll have to conserve the Earth Vein Spirit Liquid. Within the legacy left by the Divine Talisman Sect, there was a secret technique that allowed disciples, after comprehending the essence of runes, to temper their divine soul power without needing their physical body to reach postnatal perfection. But this secret technique required the assistance of Earth Vein Spirit Liquid to be performed. From the Inheritance Jade Scroll left by Li Weitian, Lu Qing understood the importance of divine soul power. Divine soul power can be called the key and the bridge to breaking through from the postnatal to the innate realm. Without divine soul power, no matter how great your talent, how strong your fighting skill, or how deep your accumulation, you won't be able to open that door or cross the great divide between the postnatal and the innate realm. Now, learning that the legacy left by the Divine Talisman Sect contains secret techniques for understanding the power of the divine soul ahead of time, how could Lu Qing not take it seriously? He immediately went to the stone platform and started examining the Earth Vein Spiritual Liquid in the indentations. Good. There's at least 30 or 40 drops of Earth Vein Spiritual Liquid here. According to the records of the Inheritance, using the secret techniques, at most 10 drops are needed to forge divine soul power. If after 10 drops it's still unsuccessful, then taking more would be useless. This is already more than enough. Seeing the quantity of the Earth Vein Spiritual Liquid, Lu Qing breathed a sigh of relief. At the same time, a thought crossed his mind. The Earth Vein Spiritual Liquid on the stone platform had once been emptied by Li Weitian. Since 1 drop of the liquid condenses every 20 years, doesn't that mean that Li Weitian must have been a figure from at least 700 to 800 years ago? 700 to 800 years. In this world, once a century passes, it can certainly be called turbulent and ever-changing. Li Weitian was such an ancient figure. It's questionable whether or not there's anyone who still remembers him in this world. Little Li saw Lu Qing staring at the items on the stone platform and instantly became excited. It jumped on the platform, tugging at Lu Qing's clothes. Lu Qing looked at the black little beast, seeing it pointing at the earth vein spiritual liquid in the platform with an eager face. "Do you want to eat this?" Lu Qing asked. Seeing little Li nod, Lu Qing began to ponder. The reason he was able to find this treasure trove was largely thanks to little Li's contribution. Without its lead, he would have never discovered such a miraculous cave behind the waterfall. Since it wanted the earth vein spiritual liquid, it was only right to give it some. According to the information revealed by his superpower, consuming the spiritual liquid brings tremendous benefits for both humans and beasts. Towards little Li, Lu Qing was not stingy. He nodded, "Okay, but first take a few drops and see. If that's not enough, then you can take more." Even though earth vein spiritual liquid was miraculous, it wasn't the case that the more you consumed, the better. According to the records of the Divine Talisman sect's legacy, the effectiveness of earth vein spiritual liquid in improving talent had its limits. For living creatures below the innate realm, the effects were strongest. Above the innate realm, the effectiveness diminishes significantly. Ordinary postnatal living creatures could improve their innate talent to an extreme with just 1 drop. Special living creatures could at most consume 5 drops, as more would be useless. Since little Li was a spiritual beast, which counted as a special creature, Lu Qing intended to give it 5 drops straight away. Hearing Lu Qing's words, little Li's eyes immediately lit up, nodding eagerly. "Wait here for a moment. To contain earth vein spiritual liquid without tainting its spiritual nature, a jade vessel must be used." Fortuitously, there were jade bottles in the alchemy room behind the hidden door in the stone room, so Lu Qing went to fetch one, cleaned it thoroughly, and transferred all of the earth vein spiritual liquid into it. He then said, "Open your mouth." Little Li, staring intently at Lu Qing, upon hearing the words opened its mouth obediently with joy. Lu Qing poured 5 drops of earth vein spiritual liquid into little Li's mouth from the jade bottle. The black little beast smacked its lips as if it enjoyed the taste, and immediately began happily squinting its eyes, rolling around on the stone platform. However, its joy didn't last long. After a while, it began to feel eyelids growing heavy and soon fell into a deep sleep on the stone platform. Lu Qing was not surprised. The legacy of the Divine Talisman sect had records that after consuming earth vein spiritual liquid, spiritual beasts typically fall into deep sleep as they slowly refine their talent and purify their bloodlines. He picked up little Li, placed it in a makeshift nest made of folded outerwear, then sat down cross-legged beside it, quietly waiting for it to awaken. Chapter 98 Rune Cultivation, Little Li's Transformation. Black Knight Spirit Fox. A spiritual beast from the mountains, young, female. Extremely fast, with sharp claws capable of crushing stones and splitting gold. It is rumored that the Black Knight Spirit Fox is very fond of fish but naturally detests water, only able to longingly sigh at the sight of fish. This little beast is undergoing a peculiar transformation, and significant changes might occur after it awakens. After checking little Li's current condition with his superpower, Lu Qing felt relieved as he found no issues. He sat nearby, waiting for little Li to awaken, while activating his superpower to silently continue studying the legacy left by the Divine Talisman sect. The first step of cultivation in the rune path is called stilling the mind and cleansing the heart. It involves specific breathing techniques and meditation methods to cleanse one's mind to a state of relaxed and ethereal emptiness. In such a state, observing the outside world allows one to more easily perceive the essential patterns of all things, sparking inspiration, thus uncovering the mystery of these patterns through profound mental stimulation. This step alone is difficult for many. Most people in the world are impetuous and find it hard to cleanse their minds. The so-called restless mind, as human thoughts are the most challenging to control, inadvertently breed distracting thoughts. Very few are naturally blessed with a pure mind and can easily control their thoughts. Thus, for many, the mere first step of stilling the mind and cleansing the heart in the rune path is an insurmountable challenge. Of course, for Lu Qing, stilling the mind and cleansing the heart was not difficult. After his battle at Happy Village, he had already cleansed his mind and solidified his commitment to the martial arts. Moreover, he possessed a superpower. When he activated his superpower to enter a learning state, he would be in a state akin to sudden enlightenment. Achieving a spiritually empty mind was overly simple for him. Thus, he could easily accomplish the first step of rune cultivation, stilling the mind and cleansing the heart. After successfully stilling the mind and cleansing the heart, the second step was to pick an object and observe it. Observing its growth patterns, structural patterns, and then cross-referencing them with runes recorded in the legacy, seeking connections and insights into the runes. The legacy suggested that those who just began practicing the rune path should start with simple items like ordinary grass, rocks, or wood. Doing this allows easier correlation and insight into the runes. Lu Qing looked around. The floor and walls inside the jade cave were all transformed into jade, without even a speck of dirt or a rock. And with little Li's uncertain awakening time, it wasn't ideal for him to leave the cave now. Therefore, after some thought, he took a piece of broken silver from his coin pouch. Since silver is a common item, hardly different from grass or rock, observing it shouldn't be hard. He placed the broken silver in his hand and started examining it attentively. This piece of silver was from the chest of silver Ma Gu had sent, genuine snowflake silver with a high degree of purity. The snowflake patterns on it were exceptionally beautiful. Lu Qing had never observed a piece of silver so closely before. Under the ethereal state of a cleansed mind, viewing the silver according to the mental methods inherited from the Divine Talisman sect, he felt something different than usual. The piece of silver before his eyes seemed magnified, and he noticed some unusual patterns. These patterns vaguely seemed familiar. He thought for a moment and found some similarity with certain runes recorded in the Divine Talisman sect's legacy. So this is the verification of runes? Lu Qing's mind remained calm, yet a flicker of insight arose in his thoughts. The legacy left by the Divine Talisman sect included a general outline, documenting 300 runes categorized under the 5 elements: metal, wood, water, fire, earth, each element featuring 60 runes. The patterns on this piece of silver bore some resemblance to the gold element runes. If Lu Qing could thoroughly comprehend these similarities, he would be able to use the gold rune to connect the patterns on the silver. By then, a piece of broken silver, when in his hands, could become a terrifying weapon, bursting with formidable power. Of course, achieving this would require an exceedingly high realm, perhaps only attainable by the mysterious existences who had opened the Jade Cave. For the current Lu Qing, that was out of reach. However, this slight insight finally made Lu Qing understand the essence of rune path cultivation. It turned out that observing the patterns of everything in the world and connecting with them meant just that. With such a revelation, Lu Qing grew even more interested in rune path cultivation. He continued to hold the broken silver in his hands and examined it. He constantly compared the strange patterns on it with the runes in his mind, trying to find a connection between them. Time trickled by as Lu Qing immersed himself in the unique cultivation of the rune path. Inside the cavern, there was a special bright light as if it was always illuminated, completely oblivious to the changes outside. It was unknown how much time had passed when a slight noise nearby woke Lu Qing from his cultivation state. "Little Li, are you awake?" Lu Qing ceased his cultivation and looked towards little Li, who was comfortably stretching. At this glance, a look of surprise flashed in his eyes. Little Li's appearance seemed unchanged, still the same size. However, the black fur, as fiery as ever, had become even deeper. Its aura also became much more ethereal, giving off a completely different sensation. Lu Qing immediately focused his gaze on the dark little beast. He saw a thick red light tinged with gold emerging from little Li. Black Knight Spirit Fox, a mountainous spiritual beast, juvenile, female. Incredibly fast, with sharp claws that can shatter stones and slice through everything. Possesses a talent skill, for that can twist light, blending into darkness. According to legends, Black Knight Spirit Foxes greatly enjoy eating fish but are naturally averse to water, only able to longingly look at fish. Gold. Lu Qing was somewhat shocked to see the superpower light emerging from little Li. Previously, although little Li was a spiritual beast, being a juvenile meant its superpower light was merely a faint red light. It was even slightly weaker than that of the housekeeper of Wei. Unexpectedly, after consuming a few drops of Earth Vein Spirit liquid, it had broken through its limits and reached a semblance of the gold level. Moreover, the description in the tag indicated it had acquired an additional talent skill. This Earth Vein Spirit liquid truly lived up to its reputation as a rare treasure liquid that could improve talent. Lu Qing sincerely marveled and couldn't help but look forward to the changes he might experience after taking the Earth Vein Spirit liquid. Little Li, how do you feel now? Any changes in your body? Lu Qing asked expectantly. He wanted to see what Little Li's newly acquired talent skill was like. Ow! Little Li first tilted her head in confusion, then seemed to ponder, sensing something. The next moment, a bizarre scene unfolded before Lu Qing. The light around Little Li twisted. Then, just like that, Little Li disappeared in front of him. Chapter 99. Swallowing the Earth Vein Spirit liquid, greatly increasing potential, returning home. Watching Little Li vanish right before his eyes, Lu Qing felt amazed. Little Li had not only hidden his body perfectly but also his chi blood, completely concealing it. With his sensing ability, he couldn't detect the presence of a living creature right in front of him. Such a perfect invisibility talent, coupled with those unbreakable claws. If Little Li was willing, it could become the world's most terrifying assassin of the night. Even a grandmaster at inner organs perfection level would likely struggle to withstand its lethal strike. At that moment, a black shadow leapt out from another direction. It was Little Li. It turned out that unbeknownst to Lu Qing, Little Li had already moved to another position. Even moving doesn't disrupt the invisibility effect? Watching Little Li emerge as if from another dimension, Lu Qing was amazed once again. Little Li seemed quite pleased with its newfound ability. It began darting through the air, playing gleefully. To Lu Qing's eyes, it appeared to possess the ability to pierce through space, constantly vanishing and reappearing. Little Li, how long can you maintain this invisibility? Seeing Little Li play for a while without showing signs of weariness, Lu Qing asked. Roar! Little Li tilted its head as if thinking and then cried out. Do you mean that as long as you wish, you can maintain the invisibility indefinitely? Having spent so much time with the little black beast, Lu Qing could now understand its intentions relatively easily. Little Li nodded. Is this what a talent skill is? Truly defies all reason. Lu Qing was impressed, and very satisfied. The 5 drops of Earth Vein Spirit liquid were well worth it. Awakening this talent had increased Little Li's lethality by countless folds. More importantly, he no longer had to worry about Little Li being discovered by others. Now, even the housekeeper of Wei would pose no threat to Little Li. With this talent, you can join us for fishing from now on, Lu Qing said with a smile. Ordinarily, to avoid attention, Lu Qing would go fishing with Little Yen while Little Li had to stay at home. Now that it had awakened the invisibility talent, it could go out freely even during the day. Upon hearing this, Little Li's eyes immediately sparkled. As someone fond of fish, it had always wanted to go fishing with Lu Qing, and now it could finally do so. All right, now it's my turn to consume the Earth Vein Spirit liquid. Little Li, watch over me for a while. After checking and finding out that Little Li no longer needed to continue taking the Earth Vein Spirit liquid, Lu Qing immediately decided. Seeing the great benefits Little Li gained, he couldn't help feeling a bit eager. After instructing Little Li, Lu Qing took out the jade bottle and poured a drop of Earth Vein Spirit liquid into his mouth. He didn't consume much. According to the Divine Talisman Sex records, ordinary postnatal living creatures generally only need a drop of Earth Vein Spirit liquid to improve their talent to its limit. Lu Qing's body was merely of ordinary human lineage, not a special spiritual beast like Little Li. So he decided to try just a drop of the liquid, to avoid wasting it. A drop of Earth Vein Spirit liquid in his stomach soon made Lu Qing feel a gentle yet surreal, enormous but non-domineering magical energy emerge from within. This peculiar energy, like a motherly embrace from the earth, brimming with the breath of life, seemed inherently highly compatible with Lu Qing's body. As soon as it appeared, it was swiftly absorbed by his physical body, merging into his muscles, bones, and every bit of his flesh. Lu Qing immediately felt his body undergoing an unimaginable transformation. A very comfortable warm sensation arose in his heart, relaxing him from body to spirit immensely. However, perhaps because he didn't consume much earth vein spirit liquid, although he felt relaxed and slightly drowsy, he remained conscious, unlike little Li, who had fallen into a deep sleep. Lu Qing quietly experienced the changes within his body. That gentle energy continuously nourished his body, causing his physical body to slowly undergo some peculiar transformation. This transformation wasn't about directly enhancing his physical strength. Instead, it deeply broke through the original limitations and improved his talent. He did not know how much time had passed when Lu Qing noticed that the gentle energy within was gradually decreasing. Yet he felt that his transformation hadn't reached its limit. Without hesitation, Lu Qing took out the jade bottle and poured another drop of earth vein spirit liquid into his mouth. Consuming this drop, the gentle energy surged again, and the transformation of Lu Qing's body continued. In total, Lu Qing consumed 3 drops of earth vein spirit liquid before his body's transformation came to an end. This surprised him. He had initially thought that just 1 drop of earth vein spirit liquid would be enough to bring his body's transformation to its limit. After all, the original owner's body was somewhat innately deficient and weak. Otherwise, he wouldn't have succumbed to a mere cold in the past. Later, through martial arts training, his chi blood had strengthened, and he had consumed supplements like the gold loach and other potent tonics. These helped significantly improve his foundation. But ultimately, his body was still that of an ordinary human, with nothing particularly special. Unexpectedly, now it took 3 drops of earth vein spirit liquid to complete the transformation. Chapter 100. Was it because he was a transmigrator, or was it the physical qualities of a chi blood realm martial artist? Lu Qing thought for a while, but couldn't figure out the reason and decided not to dwell on it. After all, the more earth vein spiritual liquid his body could absorb, the higher his talent's upper limit would be, which was all to his benefit and no harm. He stood up, pulled open his stance, and began to practice nourishing body boxing. As the airflow surged smoothly, he performed nourishing body boxing once with flair, and a look of pleasant surprise appeared in Lu Qing's eyes. He could feel that his body had indeed undergone a tremendous transformation. Although the earth vein spiritual liquid didn't directly boost his chi and blood power, he was still at the small success realm of the chi blood realm. But now, he could probably overpower several of his former selves all by himself. His potential had become much stronger, and at the same realm, he could exert much more power than before. In this case, those ginsengs I dug up earlier probably won't be enough. Before, Lu Qing had found a 200-year ginseng and 3 century-old ginsengs, along with 1 more century-old ginseng at home. If all 5 ginsengs were processed into blood-nourishing chi-enhancing pills, it would have been more than enough to cultivate him to the perfect blood chi realm. Now, after consuming the earth vein spiritual liquid, his physical talent had multiplied several times over. To quickly cultivate to the perfect blood chi realm, those 5 ginsengs would no longer suffice. It seems I need to keep digging, Lu Qing decided at once. Little Li, let's go. He had already gained all the fortuitous opportunities in the cave, so there was no need to stay any longer. Inside the cave, he was oblivious to the passing of day and night, and also unaware of what the current day was outside. Considering that little Li had been asleep for not a short time, if they didn't return soon, Master and little Yen among others would start worrying. Anyway, they could always come back here in the future, so there was no need for a tearful farewell. Taking little Li with him, he left the jade cave and returned to the valley. At that moment, outside the valley, the sun was bright, and the early morning sun had just risen. It was uncertain whether it was their 2nd or 3rd day in the mountains. Thinking of how he and little Li had not returned all night, Master and others were likely worried. Lu Qing thus did not linger in the valley and directly departed. Before leaving, Lu Qing looked deeply one more time at the waterfall's cave entrance. The harvest from this trip to the mountains for him and little Li was truly substantial. Especially for him, as he had not only acquired a cultivation technique of an innate perfection strong practitioner but also a more mysterious and magical heritage from the Divine Talisman sect. Plus all that earth vein spiritual liquid. All of these treasures, any single one of them if taken outside, would have countless forces vying desperately for them. Such a huge opportunity had unexpectedly come to him alone. Lu Qing found it incredible.
Ginseng, a precious medicinal herb, non toxic, edible.
This ginseng, having grown for a long time, has surpassed 500 years. According to legends, ginseng possesses various miraculous effects, and sufficiently aged ginseng appears even to possess the ability to awaken spiritual wisdom. Looking at the ginseng in front of him emitting half-white, half-red superpower light, Lu Qing felt extremely delighted. After leaving the valley, he and little Li did not head back to the village immediately. Upon realizing it was already morning outside, Lu Qing was no longer in a hurry to get back. Since they were delayed in the mountains for so long, half a day more didn't matter. So he decided to keep searching for ginseng, aiming to gather all the resources needed to cultivate to the perfect blood chi realm completely. This time, while choosing ginseng, he didn't insist on searching by himself. Instead, he let little Li use its peculiar sensing ability to lead him directly to dig ginsengs old enough. After consuming the earth vein spiritual liquid, little Li's peculiar sensing ability seemed to have been enhanced as well. Under its guidance, Lu Qing quickly dug up several century-old ginsengs, including even one that was 300 years old. However, that wasn't the end of the surprises. Eventually, they even found a treasure ginseng that was over 500 years old. Yes, indeed, it was a treasure ginseng. Looking at the vision dominated by red superpower light, Lu Qing knew, this ginseng, truly worthy of being called a treasure. This should be the oldest ginseng we can find in this area. Lu Qing looked around and made a judgment. After receiving the inheritance from the Divine Talisman sect, he also understood why there were so many century-old ginseng plants in this forest, as well as the reasons herbs like tianqi, which normally grow in different conditions from ginseng, appeared here too. The reason was actually not complex. Everything was related to the mysterious existence that had created the Jade Cave. After establishing the Jade Cave, that mysterious figure from the Divine Talisman sect had casually scattered some medicinal seeds in the forest, aiming to cultivate this place into a medicine field for the sect. The mysterious patterns inside the Jade Cave were actually a rune array called the Earth Pivot Gathering Spirit Array. It had the effect of organizing local earth energy and gathering the essence of earth veins. The existence of the Jade Cave made the earth energy within 100 miles of this mountain range unconsciously gather towards it. The rich earth energy naturally nourished the plants in the area to grow robustly, including the medicinal herbs. Also, due to the Jade Cave's existence, the most essential part of the earth energy, spiritual charm, condensed into earth vein spiritual liquid. This allowed the medicinal herbs in the area to also gain a touch of spiritual charm. This was why Elder Chen was initially surprised that the ginseng little Li had given Lu Qing seemed to have an especially strong effect. It was actually due to the effect of that touch of spiritual charm. The reason Lu Qing felt that he could only find ginseng up to 500 years old was because if the ginseng age were any higher, the ginseng could develop a hint of its own spiritual nature and possess the instinct to seek benefits and avoid harm. Such spiritual objects would already have the ability to move in such a vast mountain by simply burrowing into the ground. Both he and little Li would be unable to find them. Of course, the 500-year-old ginseng was already enough for Lu Qing's current use. With this treasure ginseng, he had truly amassed the resources needed to reach the perfect Qi blood realm. Carefully, he dug out the 500-year-old ginseng, wrapped it up well, and placed it into his medicine basket, feeling completely satisfied. He glanced at the sunlight filtering through the tree gaps overhead and noticed it was nearly noon. He immediately called out, "Little Li, let's go. Head home, or little Yen is going to start crying again." With a swift motion, little Li was on Lu Qing's shoulder, his eyes showing happiness. Having been out for so long, it also began to miss the little two-legged creature. Of course, what it missed more was the fresh fish meal at home. After being in the mountains for so long without catching a single fish, it now craved it terribly. With little Li, Lu Qing traveled over mountains and ridges, taking most of the day to finally emerge from the mountains. Only a martial artist like him, guided by little Li, could achieve such a feat. If it were another herb gatherer, even 3 days and nights might not be enough to find a way out. Standing on a mountaintop, looking at Jili village ahead, Lu Qing showed a sincere smile. Although the mountains held various treasures and the miraculous jade cave, only by returning to Jili village would his mood truly relax. Unconsciously, he had come to regard this place as his genuine home in this world. Tightening the straps on his medicine basket, Lu Qing walked towards the village. Just as he arrived at the village, he bumped into a villager. Seeing Lu Qing, the villager happily said, "Ah Qing, have you returned from gathering herbs?" "Yes, just got back. Uncle Hong, how long was I in the mountains?" Uncle Hong was taken aback. "You went into the mountains alone? Don't you know the time?" "I was in a cave gathering some herbs and stayed quite a while. Even took a sleep, so I lost track of time," Lu Qing explained. "No wonder," expressed Uncle Hong, coming to a realization. "Then you must have had a tough time gathering those herbs. Today is the 3rd day since you entered the mountain." "The 3rd day?" Lu Qing was shocked. He hadn't expected little Li to have slept for so long. Nor had he expected that comprehending the patterns on a silver piece had taken so much time. In his perception, not much time had passed at all. Of course, what made him even more anxious was that little Yen must be worried sick after his 2-day absence. "I didn't realize so much time had passed. Uncle Hong, I can't chat now. I need to go see my master first, or little Yen will start throwing a tantrum." "Go ahead, hurry." Lu Qing waved his hand and ran towards the half-mountain small courtyard.